My father stood on stage under the crystal chandeliers holding a champagne flute and pointed a shaking finger at me. He told the entire room of 200 guests that I was his greatest failure. He called me uneducated. He called me a leech. Everyone laughed. My sister Vanessa smirked in her sequined gown. My brother-in-law Spencer clapped his hands. They thought I was going to cry. They thought I would run away like I always did. Instead, I walked up the stairs, took the microphone from his hand, and smiled. I said, "Dad, you are absolutely right. I am uneducated. So it is a good thing this uneducated failure owns the building you are standing in, and I just canceled the check for this party. Enjoy the silence." The room went dead quiet. Before I tell you how I destroyed their egos in under 60 seconds, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the black sheep who was actually the shepherd. I am Kenna, 30 years old, and for the last decade my family has treated me like a stain on their perfect reputation. We live in Atlanta, where appearances are everything. My father, Reginald, is a retired high school principal who believes a degree on the wall is the only measure of a human being. My sister, Vanessa, is 3 years older, and she is the golden child. She works in HR and married Spencer, a white real estate agent, who my father treats like a trophy. To them, I am just Kenna, the college dropout who wears jeans and t-shirts and supposedly scrapes by selling things online. What they do not know is that I dropped out of college because I founded K Logistics, a global supply chain firm that manages shipping for major e-commerce giants. I do not just have money, I have wealth. But to my family, I am just a disappointment. Last Saturday was my father's retirement party. He demanded it be held at the Sapphire Club, one of the most exclusive country clubs in Georgia. He did not know that I am a silent partner in the ownership group of the club. He just assumed I scraped together my savings to pay for the deposit as my contribution. I arrived 20 minutes late because one of my cargo ships had a customs issue at the port of Savannah. I pulled up to the valet in my black Maybach, but I made sure to park it around the back where my family would not see. I stepped out wearing a simple black t-shirt and black denim jeans. To the untrained eye, I looked basic. To anyone who knows luxury, they would recognize the t-shirt was Brunello Cucinelli and cost $800, and the jeans were vintage Saint Laurent. But my family is loud rich, not real rich, so they would never know the difference. I walked toward the grand entrance, taking a deep breath. I just wanted to make an appearance, give my father his gift, and leave. But before I could even touch the brass handle, the double doors swung open. Vanessa blocked my path. She looked like a disco ball in a silver sequined dress that was 2 sizes too tight. Her hair was piled high on her head, and she had that look on her face. The look that said she smelled something bad. She looked me up and down and sneered. "You have got to be kidding me, Kenna. Look at you. You look like you just rolled out of bed." I checked my watch and said, "Hello to you too, Vanessa. I am late because I was working." "Working," she laughed. "Selling used clothes on eBay is not working, Kenna. This is a formal event. Spencer invited his investors tonight. These are important people. We cannot have you walking in there looking like the help." I tried to step around her, but she grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. "You are not going in the front door," she hissed. "You are an embarrassment. If you want to come in, go through the kitchen entrance. And since you are dressed like a janitor, make yourself useful." She reached behind a decorative potted plant and pulled out a black trash bag that some caterer must have left there. She shoved the plastic bag into my chest. "Take this to the dumpster on your way to the back door. At least try to look like you are contributing to this family for once." I looked down at the trash bag in my hands. Then I looked at my sister. For a second, I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that my outfit cost more than her husband made in 3 months. But I realized something. It was not worth the energy. They wanted me to be the servant. They wanted me to be beneath them because it made them feel tall. I smiled a cold, humorless smile. I took the bag. "Sure, Vanessa," I said. "I will handle the trash." She smirked, satisfied with her power trip, and turned back inside. I walked over to the stone trash receptacle by the valet stand and dropped the bag. Then I dusted off my hands, fixed my hair, and walked straight through the main front doors. The ballroom was freezing cold and smelled of expensive perfume and desperation. Round tables covered in white linen filled the room. Waiters moved silently with trays of champagne. I saw my mother sitting at the head table, wearing a hat so large it practically had its own zip code. She was laughing loudly at something Spencer was saying. Spencer looked flushed, probably from the open bar. I stayed in the back shadows, leaning against a marble pillar. I watched them. They looked like the perfect American family. The distinguished father, the elegant mother, the successful daughter and her charming husband. And then, there was the empty chair. My chair. A waiter walked by and I recognized him. It was Marcus, one of the shift managers I hired last year. He stopped when he saw me, his eyes widening. "Ms. Jenkins," he whispered. "I did not know you were coming tonight. Do you want me to prepare the owner's suite for you?" I put a finger to my lips. "Not tonight, Marcus. Treat me like a regular guest. Actually, treat me like a guest who crashed the party." He looked confused but nodded and walked away. Just then the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. My father walked up to the podium. The applause was polite. He adjusted his tie and tapped the microphone. "Thank you, everyone," he boomed. His voice was deep and practiced. The voice of a man used to commanding hallways. He spent 10 minutes talking about his career, his legacy, and his hard work. Then he turned to his family. "I could not have done this without my beautiful wife," he said. "And of course my pride and joy, Vanessa." The spotlight swung to Vanessa. She stood up and waved blowing kisses to the crowd. Vanessa followed the rules, my father continued. She got her master's degree. She climbed the corporate ladder. She married a fine young man, Spencer, who is making waves in real estate. Spencer stood up, buttoning his jacket, trying to look important. I knew for a fact Spencer had not sold a house in 6 months and was currently dodging calls from 2 different credit card companies. I knew this because my company bought the debt portfolio that included his maxed-out cards. But I kept sipping my water, watching the show. Then my father's tone changed. He looked out into the darkness of the room, searching for me. "And then there is my youngest, Kenna." The spotlight searched the room until it found me leaning against the pillar in my black t-shirt. The light was blinding. I blinked, but I did not look away. Everyone turned to stare. I heard the whispers. "Look at how she is dressed. Is that the sister? What a shame." My father sighed into the microphone, a sound of theatrical disappointment. "Kenna decided that education was not for her," he said. "She dropped out to pursue. Well, we are still not sure what she pursues, but she is here tonight, probably looking for a free meal." The room erupted in laughter. It was a cruel, sharp sound. Spencer grabbed the mic from the table stand and shouted so everyone could hear. "Do not worry, Dad. I told her if she needs cash, I have some leaves in the pool she can fish out." More laughter. My mother covered her mouth with a napkin to hide her giggle. Vanessa looked at me with pure triumph. My father smiled, basking in the audience approval. "Kenna," he said, "why do you not come up here? Since you have been finding yourself for 10 years, maybe you can find the way to the stage and say thank you to me for paying for your dinner." My heart hammered against my ribs. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. This was it. This was the moment the bridge burned. I had spent my whole life trying to buy their love. I paid the electric bills they thought were cheap. I paid the property taxes they thought were automatically deducted. I paid for this party deposit. I set my glass down on a passing tray. I pushed off the pillar. I walked through the tables. The clicking of my boots on the parquet floor was the only sound as the laughter died down. People looked at me with pity. They thought I was walking the Green Mile. I walked up the stairs to the stage. My father looked down at me, a smug grin on his face. He held the microphone out like a weapon, thinking I would take it and apologize, thinking I would stutter. I took the microphone. It felt heavy and cool in my hand. I looked at my father. I looked at Vanessa. I looked at Spencer. And then I looked at the crowd. I let the silence hang for 5 seconds. 5 seconds is a long time when 300 people are watching you. Dad, I said. My voice was steady, clear, and ice cold. You are right. I do not have a degree. I do not have a corporate job title. And I certainly do not have a husband who fakes his income tax returns like Spencer. A gasp went through the room. Spencer turned bright red. You called me uneducated, I continued. You called me worthless. You said I am freeloading off the family. It is funny you say that, because I was just doing some math in my head. I pulled a folded piece of paper from my back pocket. It was the invoice for the party. This party cost $15,000. You think you paid for it, but you did not. The check you wrote bounced 3 days ago, Dad. My father's eyes went wide. That is a lie, he hissed. I ignored him. The club manager called me because he knows I am good for it. In fact, he called me because I own 40% of this club. I turned to the audience. That is right. The uneducated dropout owns the building you are sitting in. I also own the mortgage on my parents' house, which is currently 3 months behind. And Spencer, I own the debt collection agency that is about to repossess your BMW in the parking lot. I turned back to my father. So when you called me worthless, I think you meant to say thank you. But do not bother, because I am done paying for your applause. I dropped the invoice on the floor. Cheers, everyone. This is the last time you will see me. Oh, and Dad, you have 48 hours to vacate my house. I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening thud that echoed through the silent room. I turned around and walked down the stairs. I did not run. I did not look back. I could hear my mother screaming my name. I could hear Spencer shouting, but it all sounded like noise fading in the rearview mirror. I walked past Vanessa, who was sitting with her mouth open. I stopped for just a second. Nice dress, I whispered. Try not to spill anything on it. The dry cleaning bill is on you now. I pushed open the double doors and walked out into the cool night air. The valet saw me coming and already had the Maybach running. I slid into the leather seat and locked the door. My phone started vibrating instantly. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, Spencer. I pressed the block button on each name, one by one. Then I looked at the driver. Where to, Ms. Jenkins? He asked. Take me to the office, I said. I have an empire to run. As the car pulled away, I watched the entrance of the club in the side mirror. My father had run out onto the steps, his face purple with rage, shaking his fist at the taillights. For the first time in 30 years, he looked small, he looked powerless, and I felt something I had never felt before. I felt free. But the story does not end there. In fact, that night was just the beginning of the war. Because when you cut off a parasite, it does not just die quietly. It tries to attach itself to something else. And my family was about to try the dirtiest trick in the book to drag me back down. The silence in the ballroom was not peaceful. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that suffocated you. I walked down the steps of the stage, and the sound of my boots on the hardwood floor echoed like gunshots. Every eye was glued to me. But I only had one target: my mother. She was sitting at the head table, clutching her beaded clutch bag to her chest, like it contained the nuclear codes. Her face was pale under her layers of makeup. She looked at me not with love or concern, but with pure terror. She knew what was in that bag. She knew what kept this facade of a wealthy lifestyle floating. I stopped right in front of her. I did not scream. I did not shout. I leaned down and rested my hands on the white tablecloth. Mom, I said softly, give me the wallet. She shook her head, her eyes darting around at her friends at the other tables. Kenna, please, she whispered through gritted teeth. Do not do this here. Everyone is watching. Sit down and we can talk about this at home. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. There is no home, Mom. Not for me. And in about 5 minutes there will not be one for you either if you do not hand me that wallet right now. Her grip tightened. I am your mother, Kenna. You will not embarrass me like this. I reached out and grabbed the strap of her bag. I did not yank it. I just applied steady, firm pressure. You embarrassed yourself when you let Dad call me worthless while eating a steak paid for by my bank account. Now let go! She let go. Her hands fell to her lap, shaking. I opened the clutch. Inside was the leather wallet I had bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. I opened it, and there it was. The heavy black titanium American Express Centurion card. The black card. The card that requires an invitation and a spending limit that could buy a small island. My family never asked why I had access to this card. They just assumed I was in debt up to my eyeballs or dating some old rich man. They did not care where the money came from as long as the card swiped approved. I pulled the card out. It felt cold and heavy in my fingers. I held it up so my father could see it from the stage where he was still standing like a statue. This card, I said, my voice carrying to the nearby tables, is not a family heirloom. It is mine. It is linked to K Logistics' corporate account. And as of this morning, I have reported it stolen. I looked at the crystal glass of ice water sitting in front of my mother. With a quick, sharp movement, I slammed the metal card against the edge of the table. It did not break because it is made of titanium, but the sound rang out like a bell. I dropped the heavy card into her ice water. It sank to the bottom, sitting there among the lemon slices. The card is dead, Mom, and so is my generosity. I turned to the banquet manager who was standing a few feet away, looking uncomfortable but professional. I nodded at him. He knew me. We had discussed the profit margins of this club just last week. But he knew his role tonight. "Excuse me, Mr. Henderson," I said loud enough for the table to hear. "I believe the bill for this party is outstanding. Since I am no longer a member of this party, please direct all financial inquiries to Mr. Reginald Jenkins, Mr." Henderson stepped forward holding a black leather folio. "Of course. Mr. Jenkins, the total for the evening comes to $15,400. We require immediate payment to continue service." I watched the color drain from my father's face on the stage. He scrambled down the stairs, tripping over his own feet. "Now wait just a minute," he sputtered, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "My daughter is playing a prank. She pays the bills. That is her job." Mr. Henderson did not blink. "I am afraid the card on file has been declined, sir. We need a valid form of payment now, or I will have to ask security to escort your guests out." Panic erupted at the head table. Spencer, the golden son-in-law, patted his pockets frantically, pretending to look for a wallet I knew was empty. "Oh man," he stammered. "I think left my wallet in the car. Vanessa, do you have your purse?" Vanessa looked at me with pure hatred. Her eyes were wet with angry tears. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "You selfish brat! How could you do this to Dad?" I ignored her. I turned my back on them. I turned my back on the chaos. I walked toward the exit. The walk to the door felt like floating. For years I had walked into rooms feeling small, feeling heavy with their expectations. Now I felt weightless. I pushed through the heavy double doors, and the humid Atlanta night air hit my face. It was over. I had actually done it. Around the corner of the circle driveway, the sleek black silhouette of my Maybach glided out from behind the hedges. The LED headlights cut through the darkness. My driver James stepped out and opened the rear door. He did not say a word. He did not need to. He saw the fire in my eyes. I slid into the back seat. The smell of fresh leather and expensive wood trim surrounded me. It was quiet. It was safe. It was mine. But just as James was walking around to the driver's seat, the club doors burst open. My father came stumbling out. He looked disheveled. His tie was crooked. He looked like a desperate man. "Kenna," he roared. He ran down the steps, his dress shoes slipping on the pavement. He rushed toward the car, slamming his hand against the window. "You ungrateful little witch!" he screamed, saliva flying from his mouth. "You think you can humiliate me? You think you can walk away? I made you. I put a roof over your head." I looked at him through the tinted glass. He could not see me, but I could see him perfectly. I saw the fear behind the anger. He was not mad because he lost a daughter. He was mad because he lost his ATM. "Open this door," he shouted, pounding on the glass. "If you leave now, do not you dare come back. I am disowning you. You hear me. You are no daughter of mine. I will write you out of the will. You will not get a single dime from this family." I almost laughed. The will. The will that consisted of a house I owned and debt I bought. I pressed the button on the door panel. The privacy shade slid up slowly, covering the window. My father's face disappeared inch by inch. His shouting became muffled. James got into the driver's seat and started the engine. The V12 engine purred to life, a low rumble of true power. "Drive, James," I said quietly. The car pulled away, smooth as silk. I did not look back. I did not check the rearview mirror. I reclined the seat and closed my eyes. Behind me, I left an unpaid bill, a ruined reputation, and a family that was about to find out exactly how cold the world is when you do not have a scapegoat to keep you warm. But I knew this was not the end. My father was a narcissist, and narcissists do not let their victims go without a fight. He would come for me. They all would. And when they did, they would find out that K Logistics was not just a shipping company. It was a fortress. And I was ready for war. 30 days. That is exactly how long it took for the Jenkins family dynasty to start crumbling like dry cake. When I left, I did not just take my physical presence. I took the invisible infrastructure that kept their lives running smoothly. My family lived in a bubble of luxury, but they never realized I was the one paying for the air inside it. The first thing to go was the lawn. My father, Reginald, prided himself on having the greenest, most manicured lawn in the neighborhood. He used to stand on the porch with his hands on his hips, admiring the perfect stripes in the grass. He thought the landscaping crew came every Tuesday out of respect for him. He did not know they came because I paid them $400 a month on autopay. 2 weeks after I left, the crew stopped showing up. The grass grew wild and unruly. Weeds started choking the prize-winning roses. The neighbors started to stare, but not with envy this time. They stared with judgment. Then came the pool. The sparkling blue oasis where Vanessa used to lounge and take selfies for Instagram turned into a swamp. Without the weekly chemical treatment I paid for, the water turned a murky, violent shade of green. Mosquitoes started breeding in the stagnant water. The smell of algae began to drift into the patio doors. Spencer promised he would clean it. He said he would go buy the chemicals and handle it himself. But Spencer had never done a day of manual labor in his life. He bought the wrong chemicals, dumped them in, and turned the water from green to a cloudy brown. Then he gave up and went back to watching TV, leaving the backyard to rot. But the real panic started inside the house. My mother went to her weekly appointment at the Glow Med Spa. She loved that place. She loved how they treated her like royalty. She walked in expecting her usual facial and massage. But when she went to pay with the supplementary credit card I had given her years ago, the receptionist gave her a polite but pitying smile. "I am sorry, Mrs. Jenkins. The card has been declined." My mother laughed nervously. "Try it again, dear. It must be a chip error." The receptionist tried again, then a third time. "I am sorry, ma'am. The issuer has suspended the account. Do you have another form of payment?" My mother did not have another form of payment. Her personal debit card was linked to a joint account with my father that was currently hovering near zero. She had to pretend she forgot her wallet. She had to walk out of that spa past the other wealthy women, feeling the heat of humiliation burning her neck. She went to Whole Foods afterward, trying to salvage her day by buying organic steaks and expensive wine. The same thing happened. Declined. She had to leave a cart full of groceries behind while the cashier called for a manager to void the transaction. She came home in tears, not because she missed me, but because she missed the access I gave her. Back at the house, the situation was even worse. The air conditioning had stopped working. In the humid Georgia heat, the house was becoming an oven. My father sat at the kitchen table wiping sweat from his forehead with a paper towel. In front of him was a pile of envelopes. For 5 years I had intercepted the mail. I sorted the bills, paid them, and shredded the evidence. I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to be proud of me, so I handled the burdens. Now without me there, the mailbox was overflowing. My father tore open an envelope marked Fulton County Tax Commissioner. He squinted at the paper. "What is this?" he muttered. "Property taxes. Why are they sending me this?" He looked at the bottom line and his eyes bugged out. $8,000. He stood up, knocking his chair over. $8,000. This cannot be right. I am a senior citizen. I have exemptions. He did not know that the exemptions only covered a fraction of the cost for a house that size. He did not know that the property value had skyrocketed, raising the taxes. He certainly did not know that his pension check of $3,000 a month would not even cover the electricity bill and the taxes combined. Vanessa walked into the kitchen, fanning herself with a magazine. "Daddy, it is hot in here," she whined. "When is the AC guy coming? I cannot record my skincare routine in this heat. My face is melting." My father slammed the tax bill down on the table. "There is no AC guy coming, Vanessa. Do you have $800 for the service call?" "Because I do not." Vanessa recoiled. "Why are you yelling at me? Call Kenna. This is her fault. She probably canceled the service just to be spiteful. She is such a brat." "Call her," my father scoffed. "I have called her 50 times. She blocked me. She blocked your mother. She blocked all of us." My mother walked in her mascara, running from the heat and the tears. "She embarrassed me, Reginald," she sobbed. "At the store, at the spa, my card did not work. How are we supposed to eat?" My father looked at his wife, then at his golden child daughter, then at his useless son-in-law Spencer, who was hiding in the living room playing video games. For the first time, the reality of their situation hit him. He was the head of the household in name only. I was the spine, and I was gone. "We need money," my father said, his voice trembling. "We need cash fast. Spencer said he has an investment coming through next week. We just need to hold on until then." He picked up the next envelope. It was red. The return address was from the First National Bank. My father frowned. "Why is the bank writing to me? The mortgage on this house was paid off 15 years ago." He tore open the red envelope. His hands were shaking so bad he almost ripped the letter inside. He unfolded the paper. The words stamped across the top were bold and black. "Notice of default. Second warning." He read the first line. "Dear Mr. Jenkins, this letter is to inform you that your mortgage loan ending in 459 is currently 90 days past due. The total amount required to cure the default is $12,000. Failure to pay immediately will result in the commencement of foreclosure proceedings." My father stopped breathing. The room spun. "Mortgage loan," he whispered. "What mortgage loan?" He looked at the date on the loan. It was taken out 2 years ago. It was a home equity line of credit secured against the house. He looked at the signature at the bottom of the loan document copy attached to the letter. It was his name, Reginald Jenkins. But the loop on the R was wrong. The slant was too sharp. It looked like his signature, but it was not his signature. He looked up. Through the archway into the living room, he could see Spencer laughing at the television holding a game controller. Spencer, who had handled the paperwork 2 years ago when they did the renovations. Spencer, who said he would file the documents for the permit. Vanessa saw the look on my father's face. "Daddy," she asked, her voice small. "What is it?" My father did not answer. He just stared at the red letter. The heat in the house seemed to spike 20 degrees. The silence was broken only by the sound of the game controller clicking and Spencer shouting, "Yes, I won." My father realized with a sickening lurch in his stomach that the uneducated daughter he drove away was the only honest person in his life, and the people he kept close were the ones holding the knife. He stood up slowly, clutching the red letter. "Spencer," he said. His voice was low, dangerous. Spencer paused the game. "Yeah, Dad. What is up?" My father walked into the living room, holding the paper up like a death sentence. "Tell me, Spencer, why does the bank say I owe them $200,000 on a house I paid for in 1998? Spencer's face went white. The controller dropped from his hand, clattering onto the hardwood floor. The silence in the living room was thick enough to choke on. My father stood there clutching the red foreclosure notice, his chest heaving with panic. He looked small. He looked confused. He looked at Spencer, the son-in-law he had bragged about for 5 years, waiting for an explanation that would make the nightmare go away. Spencer stood frozen by the television. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. His eyes darted from my father to Vanessa to the door. He looked like a trapped rat. "Dad," Vanessa said, breaking the silence, her voice trembling. "Maybe it is identity theft. You hear about that all the time. Maybe someone hacked your information." Spencer seized the lifeline. "Yes. Yes, exactly. That has to be it. Dad, let me look into this. I will call my contacts at the bank. You know I have people. Just give me the letter." He reached out, his hand shaking slightly. But my father pulled the letter back. "No," Reginald said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I will go to the bank myself tomorrow morning. I will get to the bottom of this." Panic flared in Spencer's eyes. If Reginald went to the bank, he would see the loan documents. He would see the signature that was a little too shaky to be real. He would see the witness name was a notary friend of Spencer who lost his license last year. Spencer forced a laugh. "Dad, you do not want to go down there. The lines are long and it is stressful. Let me handle it. Come on, Vanessa, help me get Dad some water." He grabbed Vanessa's arm. His grip was too tight. He practically dragged her into the kitchen away from my father's earshot. "What are you doing?" Vanessa hissed, pulling her arm away. "You are hurting me. And why are you acting so weird? Is it true? Did someone steal Dad's identity?" Spencer leaned in close. The smell of fear and stale cologne coming off him made Vanessa wrinkle her nose. "Vanessa, you have to listen to me," he whispered frantically. "There is no identity theft." Vanessa stared at him. "Then what is that letter?" "It is me," Spencer whispered. "It is us." "What are you talking about?" "Remember 2 years ago," Spencer said, his voice a jagged whisper, "when we wanted to invest in that crypto startup? The one that was going to triple our money in a month. The one I told you was a guaranteed ticket to our own mansion in Buckhead." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You said you used your bonus money for that." "I lied," Spencer said. "I did not have a bonus. I lost my job 3 months before that. I needed capital, Vanessa. So when your dad wanted to renovate the deck, I slipped a few extra papers into the stack. He thought he was signing for permits and contractor agreements." Vanessa gasped, covering her mouth. "You took out a home equity loan on my parents' house." Spencer nodded, wiping his sweaty upper lip. $200,000. "I thought I would double it, pay off the loan and keep the profit before anyone noticed. But the market crashed, Vanessa. The coin went to zero. The money is gone. All of it." Vanessa stared at her husband. For a moment she looked like she might scream. She looked like she might slap him. This was fraud. This was a felony. This was the kind of thing that sends people to prison and destroys families. But then she looked into the living room where her father was sitting with his head in his hands. She thought about her reputation. She thought about her Instagram followers. If this got out, she would be the wife of a felon. She would be poor. She would be humiliated. And then her mind did the mental gymnastics that only a golden child can do. She found a way to make herself the victim. "It is not your fault," she whispered. Spencer blinked, surprised. "What?" "It is not your fault," Vanessa repeated, her voice gaining strength. "You were trying to build a future for us. You were trying to be a provider. If Kenna had not been so selfish, if she had helped us with bills like she used to, you would not have been desperate. You would not have had to take that risk." Spencer's shoulders sagged in relief. "Exactly. She pushed us to this. She cut us off. She left us with nothing." Vanessa nodded, her face hardening. "We cannot let Dad find out. If he finds out, he will kick us out. We will be homeless." "So what do we do?" Spencer asked. "The bank wants 12 grand by Friday or they start the auction." Vanessa looked around the kitchen. The counters were cluttered with unpaid bills. The sink was full of dirty dishes. The house felt heavy and old. "We convince him to sell," she said. Sell the house, Spencer asked. Yes, Vanessa said. We tell him the maintenance is too much. We tell him the taxes are eating him alive, which is true. We tell him to sell the house quickly for cash. We use the sale money to pay off the mortgage you took out, and we keep the rest. We move into a luxury condo. We tell Dad it is downsizing for his retirement. Spencer smiled. It was a wicked, relieved smile. You are a genius, babe. That is why I married you. They walked back into the living room. They put on their best concerned faces. Vanessa sat next to her father and took his hand. Daddy, she said softly, Spencer and I were talking. Even if this is a bank error, it made us realize something. This house, it is too much for you. Look at you. You are stressed. The yard is a mess. The pool is a swamp. You deserve to relax. Reginald looked up, his eyes tired. But this is our home, Vanessa. Your mother loves this house. Mom is miserable, Daddy, Vanessa said. She cannot even host her book club because the air conditioning is broken. Listen, Spencer has a friend who buys houses for cash. Fast closing, no inspections. Spencer jumped in. Right. He can have a check in our hands in 10 days, Dad. We can pay off whatever this bank error claims we owe just to make it go away, and then use the rest to buy a penthouse downtown. No more yard work, no more repairs, just luxury. Reginald looked around the room. He saw the peeling paint in the corner. He saw the dust collecting on the mantel. He felt the oppressive heat. He was tired, he was broke, and he was scared. Maybe you are right, he sighed. Maybe it is time to let it go. Spencer and Vanessa exchanged a look of triumph. They had done it. They had covered their tracks. But then Vanessa looked around the room and frowned. There is one problem, she said. We cannot show the house like this. It is a pigsty. It smells like mildew and old food. If an investor walks in here, they will offer us peanuts. We need to clean it up. We need to stage it. Spencer groaned. I am not scrubbing floors, Vanessa. I have a bad back. And I just got a manicure, Vanessa snapped. We are not doing it. We need a maid. We cannot afford a maid, Spencer reminded her. We cannot even afford pizza. Vanessa tapped her chin, thinking. A slow, cruel smile spread across her face. We do not need a paid maid, she said. We have Kenna. Spencer laughed. Kenna. She hates us. She blocked our numbers. She is not coming back here to scrub toilets. She will if she thinks we have money, Vanessa said. Look, she is a dropout, right? She is probably starving by now. It has been a month. She is probably sleeping on a friend's couch eating ramen noodles, wondering why she was so stupid to leave us. But she blocked us, Spencer said. Vanessa pulled out her phone. She blocked our numbers. She did not block the landline because nobody uses landlines anymore, and she did not block her email. She started typing. I will send her an email. I will tell her Dad is sick. No, that is too obvious. I will tell her we are selling the house and Dad wants to give her a cut of the sale for her future. You think she will buy that? Spencer asked. She is desperate, Vanessa said. She has no degree, no skills. She is probably begging for a chance to come back. We tell her if she comes and cleans the house, gets it ready for the sale, we will give her, let us say, $500. 500. Spencer snorted. That is generous. It is the bait, Vanessa said. Once she is here, we make her do everything. Clean the pool, mow the lawn, pack the boxes. And when the house sells, well, maybe we forget to pay her. What is she going to do? Sue us. She cannot afford a lawyer. Reginald looked up. Are you talking about calling Kenna? Yes, Daddy, Vanessa said soothingly. We are going to give her a chance to redeem herself. She can come help us move. It will be good for her character. Reginald nodded slowly. Good. She owes us. After the way she humiliated me at the party, she should be scrubbing the floors with a toothbrush. Tell her to come tomorrow. And tell her not to be late. Vanessa hit send on the email. She leaned back on the couch, satisfied. She has no idea what is coming, she said. We are going to use her one last time, and then we are going to cash out and leave her in the dust. Little did they know, Kenna was not sitting in a studio apartment eating ramen. She was sitting in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city, reading the email on an iPad Pro. And she was not desperate. She was ready. 200 miles away from the rotting swimming pool and the stifling heat of my parents' house, I stood on the concrete dock of the port of Savannah. The air smelled of diesel fuel, salt water, and money. Massive steel cranes towered over me, lifting 40-foot shipping containers from the deck of a cargo vessel that had just arrived from Singapore. The ground shook every time a container landed on a truck chassis. It was a symphony of industry, and I was the conductor. I adjusted my white hard hat, which sat over my silk press. I was wearing steel-toed boots, but they were Balenciaga. My safety vest was custom-fitted over my blazer. I held an iPad Pro in my hand, watching the inventory numbers update in real time. Ms. Jenkins, the dock foreman, shouted over the noise of the wind. We have the 50 containers of electronics cleared for customs. The fleet is ready to roll out to the distribution centers. I nodded, scrolling through the manifest. Good work, Miller. This shipment is worth $50 million. I do not want a single crate unaccounted for. Get them on the road by noon. I felt a vibration in my pocket. I pulled out my phone, expecting a call from a client or a logistics partner. Instead, the name on the screen made my stomach tighten just for a fraction of a second. Reginald Jenkins. My father had not called me since the night of the party. He had not called to apologize. He had not called to see if I was alive. He was calling because he wanted something. I knew it. My assistant Maya, who was standing next to me holding a stark white umbrella to shield me from the sun, saw the name on the screen. She raised an eyebrow. Do you want me to send it to voicemail, Ms. Jenkins? She asked. I looked at the phone. I looked at the massive ship behind me. I looked at the empire I had built. And then I thought about the small, petty man who told me I was worthless. No, I said. I want to hear this. I slid the answer button and put the phone on speaker. I held it up so Maya could hear. Hello, Reginald, I said. My voice was business flat, no emotion. There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing heavily. I could hear the background noise of a daytime talk show, probably coming from the TV in the living room where he sat sweating. Kenna, he said. His voice was gruff, trying to sound authoritative, but I could hear the tremor in it. I am glad you answered. I assume you have calmed down from your little tantrum at the club. I signaled to the foreman to pause the crane for a moment. The silence on the dock was sudden and heavy. I am working, Reginald, I said. Make it quick. Right. Well, he cleared his throat. Your mother and I have been talking. We have decided to be the bigger people here. We are willing to forgive you. Maya covered her mouth to stop a laugh. I just stared at the phone. Forgive me, I repeated. For paying your bills for 5 years. Or for stopping. Do not get smart with me, he snapped. We are family, Kenna. And families help each other. Listen, we have some news. We are selling the house. It is too big for just the two of us now. We are going to downsize to a luxury condo in Buckhead. I knew he was lying. I knew about the foreclosure notice. I knew about the mortgage fraud. But I let him spin his fantasy. Congratulations, I said dryly. Why are you telling me? Because we need the house ready for the market, he said. And frankly, it is a mess. The cleaning service quit. The landscapers quit. It is hard to find good help these days. So I am offering you a job. A job. Yes, he said, sounding generous now. I know things must be tight for you since you are between careers. So if you come down here this weekend and clean the house, I mean really clean it, Kenna. Scrub the floors, clean the pool, pack the boxes. If you do a good job, I will pay you $500. The wind whipped across the dock, fluttering the pages of the manifest on my clipboard. $500. He thought $500 was a lifeline. He thought he was saving me. I looked at Maya. She looked furious on my behalf. But I just felt cold amusement. $500, I said slowly, letting the number hang in the air. Yes, he said quickly. Cash. But only if the job is done to my standards. I want the windows washed inside and out. And bring your own supplies. I do not want you using your mother's expensive products. I laughed. It was a loud, genuine laugh that startled the seagulls overhead. Dad, I said. Do you hear that noise in the background? I held the phone up as a truck horn blasted nearby. That is the sound of commerce, Dad. I am currently overseeing a logistics operation that generates more revenue in 1 hour than your entire pension pays in a year. What are you talking about? He sputtered. You sell old clothes on the internet. I sell solutions to Fortune 500 companies, I said, my voice hardening. And as for your offer? $500. Dad. I tipped the valet who parked my car this morning $500 just because he opened the door nicely. There was a choking sound on the other end. You are lying, he shouted. You are a liar just like you always were. You are trying to make me feel small. I am not trying to make you feel anything, I said. I am stating facts. You called the wrong number. You wanted Kenna the scapegoat. She does not exist anymore. You are talking to Kenna the CEO. And she does not scrub toilets. I hung up. I handed the phone to Maya. Block him again. And tell security at the office that if a man named Reginald Jenkins shows up, he is to be treated as a trespasser. Yes, Ms. Jenkins, Maya said, taking the phone. But I was not done. The anger that had sparked in my chest was not the hot, chaotic anger of a child. It was the cold, calculated anger of a strategist. He wanted to sell the house. He wanted to use the equity to cover Spencer's crime and walk away clean. He wanted to erase the debt and pretend he was still the king of his castle. I could not let that happen. I pulled out my second phone, the secure line. I dialed a number I knew by heart. David, pick up. David was my corporate attorney. A shark in a three-piece suit who cost $1,000 an hour and was worth every penny. Kenna, he answered immediately. What do you need? I walked to the edge of the dock, looking down at the dark water swirling against the concrete pilings. I need you to make a purchase, I said. Real estate, David asked. Distressed debt, I said. There is a residential property in North Atlanta. It is currently under a notice of default with First National Bank. The borrower is Reginald Jenkins. I heard the typing of keys on the other end. I see it, David said. Foreclosure process initiated yesterday. It is a risky buy, Kenna. The equity is questionable if the market dips. I do not care about the equity, I said. I want the note. I want to be the bank. You want to buy your father's mortgage? David asked, his voice careful. I want to buy the power, David. Contact the bank immediately. Offer them full value for the outstanding loan plus the arrears. They will be happy to get it off their books without the legal hassle of an auction. And who should I list as the buyer? David asked. K Logistics. No, I said. Create a shell company. Call it the Phoenix Group. I do not want him to know it is me. Not yet. I want him to think he is dealing with a faceless corporation. I want him to think he can negotiate. I want him to feel hope. And then when he is standing in that house surrounded by boxes thinking he has escaped, I want to be the one who walks through the door. Understood, David said. I will have the paperwork ready by end of day. By tomorrow morning you will own the debt. You will own the house. Good, I said. I hung up the phone. I looked back at the ship. The crane lowered another container. It landed with a boom that shook the ground. My father wanted me to clean his house. He wanted me to scrub his floors. I smiled. I was going to clean his house all right. I was going to clean it out completely. And I was going to do it legally, publicly, and permanently. The game had changed. He was playing checkers with family guilt. I was playing chess with the law. And I had just moved my queen into position. Checkmate, old man, checkmate. Friday morning arrived with the humidity of a sauna and the silence of impending doom. My father Reginald sat on the front porch sipping lukewarm coffee, trying to ignore the weeds that were now tall enough to brush against his ankles. He was waiting for the mail, hoping for a check or a miracle. Instead, he got a dark sedan pulling into the driveway. A man in a cheap gray suit stepped out. He did not look like a friend. He did not look like a neighbor. He looked like official business. He walked up the driveway with a clipboard and a roll of neon orange tape. Reginald stood up. "Can I help you, sir?" The man did not stop. He walked right past my father up the steps to the front door. He pulled a sheet of paper from his clipboard, slapped it against the mahogany wood, and used a heavy-duty staple gun to secure it. Thwack! 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 The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood. "Hey," my father shouted, spilling his coffee. "What do you think you are doing? You cannot just deface my property like that." The man turned around. He looked bored. He had done this 10 times already that morning. "Mr. Reginald Jenkins?" he asked. "Yes, that is me. You have been served. This is a notice of foreclosure and eviction. You have missed the cure period for your default. The property is now under bank control. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises before the sheriff returns to escort you out." My father stood there, mouth open, as the man walked back to his sedan and drove away. He turned to look at the door. The paper was bright orange. It was aggressive. It screamed failure. And right across the street, Mrs. Higgins, the neighborhood gossip, was standing by her mailbox. She was watching. She adjusted her glasses to get a better look. She would be on the phone with the church prayer circle in less than 5 minutes. My father ripped the paper off the door, tearing the wood finish in the process. He crumpled it in his fist. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The shame was hot and suffocating. He was the respected retired principal. He was the man who gave speeches about responsibility, and now he was the man with the orange sticker. He stormed into the house. The air was stale and hot. Spencer and Vanessa were in the kitchen eating cereal. They looked up as Reginald kicked the door shut. "Dad." "What is wrong?" Vanessa asked. Reginald threw the crumpled orange ball at Spencer. It bounced off his chest and landed in his bowl of milk. "What is wrong?" Reginald roared. "What is wrong is that the bank just tagged my house like a crime scene. They are kicking us out, Spencer. 48 hours. You said you handled it. You said you were talking to your contacts." Spencer went pale. He stared at the soggy orange paper floating in his Fruit Loops. "I did, Dad," he stammered. "I mean, I am. It is a process. These things take time." "Time," Reginald screamed. "We do not have time. The sheriff is coming in 2 days. You lied to me. You said this was an error. You said you fixed it." Reginald advanced on him. For the first time, he looked at his son-in-law not as a golden ticket, but as a liar. "Did you take out that loan, Spencer? Tell me the truth." The room went deadly silent. Vanessa stopped chewing. This was the moment. The moment the truth could have come out. But Spencer looked at Reginald's purple face, and he knew if he confessed he was dead. He would be on the street. He needed a scapegoat. And he knew exactly who Reginald wanted to blame. "No," Spencer shouted, jumping up. "No, Dad. I did not take the loan. I swear on my mother's life." "Then who did Reginald demanded? Who has my social security number? Who has access to my financial records? Who has been handling the bills in this house for 5 years? Spencer's eyes lit up. He saw the path. "It was Kenna," he said. Reginald froze. "Kenna? Think about it, Dad," Spencer said, his voice gaining confidence. "Who hates us right now? Who just threatened us at the party? Who works in logistics and knows how to move paperwork around? She has had access to your identity for years. She paid the bills, remember? She has your social. She has your signature on file." Vanessa caught on instantly. She stood up, dropping her spoon. "Oh my God," she gasped. "That explains it. That explains why she cut us off. She wanted to trap us. She probably took out that loan 2 years ago using your name and pocketed the money for her little business. And now she stopped paying it to destroy you." Reginald blinked. The logic was twisted, but to his narcissist brain it was like honey. It felt right. He did not want to believe he was stupid enough to be conned by Spencer. But he was more than willing to believe Kenna was evil enough to destroy him. It fits the narrative he had built. Kenna, the bad seed. Kenna the failure. Kenna the enemy. She stole my identity, he whispered. His shock was replaced by a cold, burning fury. She stole $200,000 of my equity, Spencer added, fueling the fire. She probably bought that fancy car with your money, Dad. That is why she was laughing at you on the phone. She is spending your retirement while you get evicted. Reginald slammed his fist onto the granite countertop. The impact cracked the stone. That ungrateful thief, he growled. I fed her. I clothed her. And this is how she repays me. She wants to see me on the street. She wants to humiliate me in front of Mrs. Higgins. He looked at the orange paper in the cereal bowl. She thinks she is smart, he said. She thinks she can hide behind her little LLCs and her blocked phone numbers. She thinks I am just a helpless old man. He turned to Spencer. Do you know where her office is? Spencer nodded eagerly. I tracked it down, Dad. It is that glass building downtown, the one near the stadium. Reginald marched to the hallway closet. He grabbed his keys. He grabbed his cane not because he needed it to walk, but because he wanted something heavy in his hand. Get in the car, he ordered. Dad, what are we going to do? Vanessa asked, her voice trembling with excitement. We are going to go to her office, Reginald said. We are going to walk right past her security. And I am going to make her sign a confession before I drag her to the police station myself. She is going to jail, Vanessa. She is going to pay for every cent she stole. But Dad, Spencer said, trying to sound cautious while hiding his relief. What if she refuses to see us? Reginald opened the front door. The heat wave hit him, but he did not feel it. He only felt the adrenaline of a man on a crusade. She will see us, he said, because I am her father. And she is still afraid of me. She might play the big shot CEO on the phone, but when I look her in the eye, she will crumble just like she always did when she was 6 years old. He walked out to his car. Get in, he shouted. We are going to get my money back. Spencer and Vanessa exchanged a look. They had done it. They had shifted the bomb into Kenna's lap. They grabbed their phones and ran after him. They piled into the old Lexus. Reginald jammed the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered before roaring to life. He backed out of the driveway, tires screeching, running over the tall weeds he used to hate. They were not driving to a family reunion. They were driving to a war zone. They thought they were the predators hunting down a weak prey. They had no idea they were driving straight into the lion's den. And the lion was waiting. The drive to the address listed in my father's old address book was a journey into the past. My father, Reginald, drove his Lexus with white-knuckled intensity, weaving through traffic as if the road belonged to him. The air conditioning in the car was struggling against the Georgia heat, and the tension inside the vehicle was thicker than the humidity outside. Vanessa sat in the back seat checking her makeup in the mirror while Spencer tapped his foot nervously against the floor mat. They were a team of predators convinced they were hunting a wounded animal. They had no idea they were tracking a ghost. The address led them to the Pines, a rundown apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. It was the place I had lived in my early 20s when I first started the company. The paint was peeling off the siding, and a rusted bicycle was chained to the stairwell. My father looked at the building with a sneer of satisfaction. This was exactly where he expected me to be. It confirmed his narrative. Kenna, the failure living in squalor. He parked the car, taking up 2 spaces, and marched up the stairs, his cane clicking loudly on the concrete. He pounded on the door of apartment 2B. Open up, Kenna, he shouted. I know you are in there. We need to talk about the money you stole. There was no answer. He pounded again, harder this time, shaking the flimsy door frame. Do not hide from me, girl. I am not leaving until I see a confession. The door swung open, but it was not me standing there. It was a large man with a beard wearing a stained tank top, holding a half-eaten sandwich. He looked at my father, then at Spencer and Vanessa standing behind him. "Who are you people?" the man asked, his voice gruff. Reginald blinked, confused. "I am looking for my daughter, Kenna Jenkins. Tell her to come out." The man took a bite of his sandwich and chewed slowly, staring at my father like he was crazy. "Kenna," he said. "The quiet girl. She has not lived here in 2 years, man." Reginald froze. 2 years? "Yeah," the man said. "She moved out a long time ago. Said she needed more space. I saw movers taking her stuff. High-end movers, too. Not a U-Haul." Vanessa stepped forward. "Where did she go? Did she leave a forwarding address?" The man shrugged. "No. But I remember the car that picked her up. Big black car. Tinted windows. Looked expensive. Now get off my porch before I call the cops." He slammed the door in their faces. Reginald stood there, staring at the peeling paint on the door. The narrative in his head cracked just a little bit. A black car. High-end movers. It did not make sense. Unless she is running a scam," Spencer said quickly, sensing the doubt in Reginald's eyes. "That is it, Dad. She is moving around to stay ahead of the law. Criminals move a lot. She probably stiffed the landlord here just like she is trying to stiff the bank on your house." Reginald nodded slowly. "Yes, that must be it. She is hiding." Vanessa pulled out her phone. Her long acrylic nails clicked against the screen as she typed furiously. "I am going to find her," she said. "I never looked her up before because honestly, I did not care. But she has to have a digital footprint." She opened LinkedIn. She typed Kenna Jenkins. There were a few results, but one stood out. It was a profile with no photo, just a name and a current position. "Found her," Vanessa announced triumphantly. Reginald and Spencer crowded around her phone in the sweltering heat of the parking lot. "What does it say?" Reginald demanded. "Is she working at a fast food joint? Is she unemployed?" Vanessa squinted at the screen. "It says she works at K Logistics. Position listed is logistics management." Spencer let out a loud barking laugh. "Logistics. That means she works in a warehouse, Dad. She is probably driving a forklift or packing boxes." Vanessa scrolled down. "It says the company headquarters is downtown." Reginald straightened his tie. "A warehouse worker. Of course. That explains the dirty clothes she wears. That explains why she looked so tired at the party. She is a manual laborer." He felt a surge of confidence return. If I was a CEO dealing with a warehouse worker, he knew exactly how to handle that dynamic. He had spent 40 years looking down on people like that. "Get back in the car," Reginald ordered. "We are going to her job. We are going to find her manager. And we are going to make a scene that she will never forget." They piled back into the Lexus. The drive downtown took 30 minutes. As they got closer to the city center, the buildings got taller and the cars got more expensive. They entered the financial district, a world of steel and glass where billions of dollars moved every day. Reginald felt out of place, but his anger kept him focused. Spencer was in the passenger seat looking up the address. "It should be right here on the left," Spencer said, pointing. Reginald turned the corner and slammed on the brakes. They were not looking at a warehouse. They were looking at a skyscraper. It was a 40-story tower of blue glass reflecting the afternoon sun. It dominated the skyline. And right at the top in massive silver letters was the logo. A stylized K, followed by the word logistics. Reginald stared up through the windshield. His mouth went dry. "Is this the place?" he asked. Spencer swallowed hard. Yes. This is the address. Maybe the warehouse is in the basement. You know how these big companies are. They keep the grunt workers underground." Vanessa scoffed from the back seat. "Or maybe she is a janitor. Or maybe she works in the mailroom. It does not matter how big the building is, Dad. She is still just a cog in the wheel." Reginald nodded, gripping the steering wheel. "You are right. She is probably hiding in a cubicle somewhere, hoping I do not find her. Well, she is wrong. He pulled the Lexus into the circular driveway reserved for executives and clients. A valet stepped forward, but Reginald waved him off aggressively. "I am not staying," he shouted through the window. "I am here to collect a debt." He turned off the engine and got out. He adjusted his jacket, trying to look important, but his shirt was stained with sweat, and his face was red with exertion. Spencer and Vanessa followed him, flanking him like lieutenants in a doomed army. They marched toward the revolving glass doors. The lobby inside was like a cathedral of capitalism. The ceilings were 30 feet high. The floors were polished white marble that reflected their shoes. A massive abstract sculpture stood in the center of the room. People in tailored suits walked briskly, whispering into headsets, carrying leather briefcases. The air inside was cool and smelled of expensive lilies. It was a different world. A world of quiet power. And then the Jenkins family entered. They were loud. They were messy. They brought the chaotic energy of their desperation into this sanctuary of order. Reginald slammed his cane onto the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Heads turned. Security guards in dark blazers adjusted their earpieces. Spencer looked around nervously. "This place is huge, Dad. Maybe we should call first." "No calling," Reginald barked. "I am done calling." He marched straight to the reception desk. The desk was a massive slab of black granite. Behind it sat a young woman with perfect posture, wearing a headset. She looked up as Reginald approached, her eyes scanning his disheveled appearance with polite detachment. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her voice calm and professional. Reginald leaned over the desk, invading her space. "Yes, you can help me. I am looking for an employee of this company. Her name is Kenna Jenkins." The receptionist typed something on her keyboard. She did not look impressed. "Do you have an appointment, Mr. Jenkins?" she asked. "Appointment." Reginald laughed, a harsh barking sound. "I do not need an appointment. I am her father, and I demand to see her right now." The receptionist stopped typing. She looked at Reginald, then at Spencer, who was sweating profusely, and then at Vanessa, who was trying to look haughty, but failing. "I'm afraid I cannot just call an employee down without an appointment, sir," she said. "We have security protocols." Reginald slammed his hand on the desk. "Protocols," he shouted, causing a hush to fall over the entire lobby. "I do not care about your protocols. She is probably in the mailroom or scrubbing a toilet somewhere. You get her on the PA system, you tell her Reginald Jenkins is here, and tell her if she does not come down here in 2 minutes, I am going to find her manager and get her fired for theft." Spencer chimed in, emboldened by the noise. "Yeah, tell her the jig is up. Tell her to bring the checkbook." The receptionist's face went very still. She looked at the screen again. Then she looked at Reginald with a strange expression. It was not fear. It was confusion mixed with something that looked like warning. "Sir," she said slowly, "you want me to call Ms. Jenkins?" "Yes," Reginald yelled. "Call her. Drag her down here by her ear if you have to." The receptionist pressed a button on her phone. She held the receiver to her ear, her eyes never leaving Reginald's face. "Security," she said softly. "We have a code red in the lobby. And please alert the CEO suite. Her family is here, and they are making threats." Reginald smiled smugly at Spencer. "See," he whispered, "CEO suite. They are calling the big boss to deal with her. She is going to be out on the street before lunch." He turned to watch the elevator banks, expecting to see his daughter walk out wearing a janitor uniform, looking defeated. He adjusted his cuffs, ready to deliver his verdict. He had no idea that the elevator that was descending was not the service elevator. It was the private express lift from the penthouse floor. And the person inside was not coming down to surrender. She was coming down to execute. The soft chime of the elevator echoed through the massive, silent lobby. It was not the ding of the service elevator or the main banks used by the hundreds of employees. It was the singular, distinct tone of the executive lift. The doors slid open with a smooth hush, revealing an interior lined with polished wood and mirrors. My father, Reginald, spun around ready to unleash his fury on a janitor or a mail clerk. Spencer and Vanessa stood behind him, their faces twisted into masks of arrogant anticipation. They expected to see me in a stained t-shirt, maybe holding a mop or a box of files. They expected Kenna the failure. I stepped out. I was wearing a cream-colored power suit tailored to within an inch of its life. It was Italian wool, sharp and structured. My hair was pulled back into a sleek bun, and on my wrist sat a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than my parents' entire retirement fund. I walked across the marble floor with the steady, rhythmic click of stiletto heels. For a second, they did not say anything. They just stared. The cognitive dissonance was short-circuiting their brains. They saw me, but they refused to see the reality. In their minds, I was playing dress-up. I was a child wearing mommy's clothes. I was a fraud. "There she is," Reginald shouted, breaking the silence. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "Look at her, strutting around like she owns the place. Who did you steal that suit from, Kenna? Did you take it from the lost and found?" I did not stop walking until I was 10 feet away from them. I stood tall, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. I looked at the receptionist, who was watching with wide eyes, and gave her a small nod. She nodded back, understanding that I was handling this. "Hello, Dad," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used to close million-dollar deals. "Do not hello me, you thief!" Reginald screamed. He lunged forward. His face was a mask of pure rage. He raised his hand the way he used to when I was a teenager, ready to strike me across the face to teach me a lesson about respect. But I was not a teenager anymore, and this was not his house. Before his hand could get within a foot of my face, a massive hand clamped down on his wrist. My head of security, a 6'5" former linebacker named Marcus, stepped out from behind a pillar. He did not say a word. He just held my father's arm in a grip of iron. Reginald gasped, trying to yank his arm back. "Let go of me! Do you know who I am?" I stepped closer. "Marcus, release him." Marcus let go, and Reginald stumbled back, rubbing his wrist. He looked at Marcus with fear, then looked at me with renewed hatred. "You hire thugs now," he spat. "Is that what you do with my money? You steal my equity to pay for bodyguards and fancy clothes while I get evicted." I motioned to the glass-walled conference room to my right. It was a fishbowl visible to the entire lobby but soundproof. "We are not doing this here," I said. "Step into the conference room." "I am not going anywhere with you," Reginald yelled. "I want the police." I looked him dead in the eye. "You can have the police, Dad, or you can have a solution to your debt. It is your choice. But if you keep shouting in my lobby, I will have Marcus throw you out onto the pavement and you can explain your foreclosure to the pedestrians." Reginald hesitated. The word debt caught his attention. He exchanged a look with Spencer. Spencer nodded vigorously, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Fine," Reginald growled. "We will talk, but do not think you can talk your way out of this." I turned and walked into the glass room. They followed me. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table. They stood on the other side, refusing to sit, as if sitting would be a sign of weakness. Vanessa looked around the room. Her eyes lingered on the view of the city skyline, then on my suit. I saw the jealousy flare in her eyes. She wanted to ask where I got it. She wanted to know why I looked like a queen while she felt like a pauper. But she swallowed it down and replaced it with disdain. "Nice office, Kenna," she sneered. "Which executive are you sleeping with to get access to this room? Or did you sneak in while the real boss is at lunch?" I ignored her. I opened the leather folder I had brought down with me. "You are here because of the house," I said. "We are here because you committed fraud," Spencer shouted, slamming his hands on the table. "You stole Reginald's identity. You took out a loan 2 years ago, and now the bank is calling it in." I looked at Spencer. I looked at the sweat on his upper lip. I looked at the way his hands shook. He was projecting so hard he was practically vibrating. Is that the story you told him, Spencer? I asked softly. Spencer flinched. He looked at Reginald. Do not listen to her, Dad. She is trying to confuse you. She is a manipulator. Reginald leaned over the table. Shut up, Spencer. And you canna stop playing games. I know what you did. You hated us for being successful, so you tried to drag us down. Well, it is over. I want you to pay off that loan today, right now, or I swear to God I will ruin you. I leaned back in my chair. You want me to pay the debt? I asked. Yes, Reginald said. You owe me. You owe me for 18 years of food and shelter. You owe me for being a disappointment. You owe me for the embarrassment you caused at the party. You pay that $200,000 and maybe I will not press charges. I tapped my pen against the table. The rhythmic sound was the only noise in the room. Okay, I said. The room froze. What Reginald asked, suspicious. I said, okay. I will take care of the debt. I will make sure the bank does not foreclose on you today. Reginald let out a breath he had been holding. A smug, triumphant smile spread across his face. He looked at Vanessa and winked. He thought he had won. He thought his intimidation had worked. He thought I was still the scared little girl desperate for his approval. See, he said, straightening his jacket. I knew you would break. You always do. You know you are guilty. I opened the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. I will handle the financial issue, I said, but there is a condition. Reginald looked at the paper. It was a legal document. The title at the top read, Irrevocable Severance of Ties and Asset Waiver. What is this? He asked, picking it up. It is a contract, I explained. It states that from this moment forward, you, Reginald Jenkins, along with Vanessa and Spencer, have no legal or personal relationship with me. It states that you voluntarily forfeit any and all claims to my current and future assets. You cannot sue me. You cannot claim support. You cannot claim inheritance. You are legally strangers to me. Reginald read the paper. He started to laugh. It was a harsh barking sound. He looked at Spencer. Look at this. She wants me to sign away my rights to her assets. He looked back at me, his eyes full of mockery. What assets, Kenna? Your collection of used clothes, your beat-up car. You think because you work in a fancy building and wear a suit you stole that you have an estate to protect. I kept my face completely neutral. If I am so worthless, Dad, then it should be easy for you to sign. If I have nothing, then you are giving up nothing. Reginald sneered. You are right. You have nothing. You are a zero. A big fat zero. He pulled a gold pen from his pocket. The pen he had received as a retirement gift. I will sign your little fantasy paper, he said. I will sign it gladly, because I do not want anything to do with you. I do not want your debt. I do not want your drama. I want to cut you off just as much as you want to cut me off. He pressed the pen to the paper. Dad? Wait, Vanessa said suddenly. Maybe you should read it. It looks like a lot of legal jargon. Reginald waved her off. I do not need to read it. I know what it is. It is a desperate attempt by a failure to feel important. She wants to feel like she is rejecting us before we reject her. He scribbled his signature aggressively on the line. The scratching sound was loud in the quiet room. There, he said, shoving the paper back at me. Signed, sealed, delivered. Now you are nobody to me. You are a stranger. He stood up, feeling tall, feeling powerful. Now hold up your end of the bargain, he demanded. Call the bank, pay the money, and then get out of my life. I took the paper. I checked the signature. It was valid. I checked the witness line. I signed it myself as the notary public since I held the license. I closed the folder. Consider it done, Reginald, I said. The bank will not bother you anymore. Reginald laughed. Good. Now, if you will excuse us, we have a celebration to attend. We are selling the house anyway, you know. We are moving up in the world, and you are staying right here in the dirt. He turned and walked toward the glass doors. Spencer and Vanessa followed him, casting one last look of disgust in my direction. I watched them go. I watched my father strut out of the lobby, thinking he had just bullied his daughter into submission. He had no idea that with that one signature he had just cost himself access to a $15 million fortune. He had no idea that he had just handed me the legal weapon to bury him. I waited until they were out the revolving doors. Then I picked up the phone on the conference table. "David," I said. He signed. "Excellent," David replied. "The deed is ready. The transfer of the note is complete. You are officially the owner of the mortgage." "Great," I said. "And David." "Yes, Kenna. Send the eviction team. But give them 48 hours like the notice said. I want them to think they won. I want them to pack their boxes thinking they are moving to a penthouse. And then on Sunday morning, I want to be the one to tell them where they are really going." I hung up the phone. I looked out the glass wall at the city of Atlanta. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the skyscrapers. My father called me a zero. He was about to find out that when you put a zero behind a number, it multiplies the power. And I was about to multiply his misery by a factor of 10. My father threw the gold pen down on the mahogany conference table with a clatter. He looked at me with that familiar smirk, the one that used to make me feel small when I was a child. He leaned back in the expensive leather chair, crossing his arms over his chest like a man who had just won a war. "There," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "I signed your little paper. I have officially cut ties with you. Now hold up your end of the deal. Call the bank, pay the money, and make sure they know who they are dealing with." I reached across the polished table and picked up the document. I checked the signature. It was bold. It was aggressive. It was legally binding. Reginald Jenkins had voluntarily waived all rights to my assets present and future. He had signed away his claim to the empire I built just to save himself from a debt he created. I placed the document carefully into my leather folder and snapped it shut. The sound was sharp like a pistol hammer clicking into place. "Consider it handled, Reginald," I said, keeping my voice flat and professional. "I have already instructed my legal team to intervene. The bank will not be sending the sheriff to your door this afternoon. The foreclosure auction has been canceled." The tension in the room broke instantly. Spencer let out a loud whoop of relief. He slumped against the glass wall, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Oh, thank God," he breathed. "That was too close. I thought I was actually going to have to pack." Vanessa let out a high-pitched laugh and clapped her hands. "See," she said, turning to Spencer. "I told you she would cave. I told you she would fix it. She is desperate for Dad approval." She turned to me, her eyes full of disdain. "Finally, you did something right, Kenna. Now that the drama is over, we can go back to our lives. Dad let us go get dinner. I am starving. And Spencer, you are buying since Kenna just bailed you out." Reginald stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt. "You did the right thing, Kenna," he said. "I am glad you came to your senses. Now do not expect a thank you card. You owed us this." He started to walk toward the door, expecting me to move out of his way, expecting me to open the door for him like a servant. I did not move. I stood there, blocking his path, my face completely impassive. "I think you misunderstood me," I said. Reginald stopped. He frowned. "Misunderstood what?" "You said the auction is canceled. You said the sheriff is not coming today." "That is correct," I said. "The sheriff is not coming today, but he will be coming on Friday." The room went deadly silent. The smile dropped off Spencer's face. Vanessa froze mid-step. "Excuse me?" Reginald asked, his voice dropping an octave. "What did you just say?" "I said you have 48 hours, I repeated clearly. "The bank is not kicking you out today because the debt has been settled, but the property is no longer yours. You need to be out by Friday morning." Spencer pushed forward, his face turning red. "Wait a minute," he shouted. "You said you paid the debt. If you paid the debt, then we own the house again. That is how it works. You cannot just trick us like that." I looked at Spencer. I looked at the man who had lied to my father and stolen his equity. "I did not trick anyone, Spencer," I said, cold as ice. "I told you I would solve the problem of the foreclosure, and I did." I purchased the note from the bank. The debt is settled because the bank has been paid. But the collateral now belongs to the new note holder. And the new note holder has decided to exercise their right to immediate possession. Reginald slammed his hand on the glass wall. "Who is the note holder?" he screamed. "Who did you sell us out to? Is it one of your shady business partners?" I stared him down. "The new owner is a private investment firm called the Phoenix Group," I lied smoothly. "They specialize in distressed assets. They do not want tenants, Dad, especially tenants with a history of fraud and non-payment. They want the building." Reginald looked like he was having a stroke. The veins in his neck bulged. "You get them on the phone," he demanded. "You tell them who I am. Tell them I am Reginald Jenkins. Tell them I am a pillar of this community. I will not be evicted by some faceless corporation." I shook my head. "I cannot do that, Dad. You just signed the waiver, remember? You signed away your right to contest the asset transfer. You agreed that you have no claim. The Phoenix Group owns the deed now, and they are very strict." Vanessa started to cry, but it was not sad crying. It was angry, ugly crying. "Where are we supposed to go?" she wailed. "We cannot move in 48 hours. I have so many clothes. I have furniture. We have nowhere to go." I shrugged. "That sounds like a logistics problem," I said. "And since you guys think logistics is just moving boxes, I am sure you can figure it out. I suggest you start with the heavy furniture. Movers charge triple for last-minute bookings." Reginald stepped into my personal space. He grabbed the lapel of my jacket. "Fix this, Kenna," he hissed. "Fix it now. Buy the house from them. You act like you are so rich. Buy it and let us stay." I looked down at his hand on my expensive suit. I carefully peeled his fingers off one by one. "I cannot do that," I said. "The Phoenix Group has already scheduled the final walkthrough. They are taking possession on Friday at 9 a.m. sharp." I adjusted my jacket. "My work here is done. You have 2 days. I suggest you stop screaming at me and start packing." I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard the chaos erupting. Spencer was cursing. Vanessa was sobbing about her shoe collection. Reginald was shouting threats into the air. "Where are you going?" Reginald shouted after me. "Who is this Phoenix Group? How do I contact them? I want to speak to the manager." I paused with my hand on the cool metal handle of the glass door. I looked back over my shoulder. "You do not contact them, Dad," I said. "They will contact you. In fact, the owner will be there personally on Friday for the final walkthrough." I allowed a small, mysterious smile to touch my lips. "Make sure the floors are clean," I added. "I hear the new owner is very particular about cleanliness." I pushed the door open and walked out. I walked across the marble lobby, leaving the sound of their destruction trapped behind the soundproof glass. The receptionist looked up at me as I passed. She looked at the screaming family in the fishbowl. Then she looked at me. She gave me a tiny, subtle nod of respect. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the penthouse. As the doors slid shut, I saw my father pounding on the glass, his mouth moving in silent screams. He looked like a fish in a tank that was slowly running out of water. He thought the storm was over because the rain had stopped. He had no idea that I was the hurricane and I was just waiting to make landfall. Friday was going to be interesting. Friday was going to be the end of Reginald Jenkins and the rise of the Phoenix. And I could not wait to see the look on his face when the Phoenix spread its wings. Friday morning rose over the Jenkins household like a bruise, purple and hot. The air conditioning was still broken, and the humidity inside the house was thick enough to chew on. It smelled of cardboard dust, old sweat and panic. The house that my father had once kept pristine was now a war zone of boxes and debris. Vanessa stood precariously on a stepladder in the dining room. Her expensive manicure was chipped, and her hair was tied back in a messy knot. She was not packing dishes or clothes. She was unscrewing the crystal chandelier from the ceiling. "Be careful with that, Spencer," she snapped at her husband, who was holding the ladder with shaking hands. "This fixture is worth $3,000. We are not leaving it for the new owners. It is going on eBay the second we get to the condo." Spencer wiped sweat from his eyes. Vanessa, we do not have time for light fixtures. We need to get the furniture out. The movers are charging by the hour, and we have not even started on the upstairs bedroom. I do not care about time, Vanessa grunted, twisting a screw with a butter knife, because they could not find a screwdriver. I am taking everything. I am taking the curtains. I am taking the brass switch plates. I am taking the shower heads. Kenna said the new owners are corporate investors, right? They do not need our nice things. They can buy their own. In the corner of the living room, my father Reginald sat in his leather recliner. It was the only piece of furniture not covered in bubble wrap or buried under piles of clothes. He stared at the blank television screen, muttering to himself. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. His posture was slumped, his eyes hollow but burning with a low embers of resentment. She did this on purpose, he mumbled. Vanessa ignored him, pulling the heavy crystal fixture free from the ceiling wires. It swung down dangerously, missing Spencer head by inches. Who dad? She asked, struggling under the weight. Kenna, Reginald said loudly. She planned this. She timed it perfectly. She waits until I am vulnerable, until I am old, and then she sells me out to some vultures called the Phoenix Group. She probably got a kickback. I bet she made money off my misery. Spencer lowered the chandelier to the floor, wrapped it in a blanket, and looked at Reginald. Dad, we have to go. The walkthrough is at 9 o'clock. It is 8:45. If we are not out of here, Kenna said, the locks get changed immediately. Let them change the locks, Reginald spat. Let them try to move me. I am Reginald Jenkins. I have lived in this house for 20 years. I am not afraid of some corporate suits. But even as he said it, he looked around the room with fear. He was afraid. He was terrified. Because for the first time in his life he had no control. He had signed the waiver. He had admitted defeat. And now he was just an old man sitting in a hot house waiting to be evicted. Suddenly the sound of engines cut through the morning silence. It was not the rumble of a moving truck. It was the deep purring hum of high-performance vehicles. Spencer ran to the window and peeled back the edge of the sheet they had nailed up as a makeshift curtain. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What is it?" Vanessa asked, wiping dust from her forehead. "Is it the movers? Finally!" "No," Spencer said, his voice trembling. "It is not movers." Reginald pushed himself out of the chair. He walked to the window, leaning on his cane. He looked out onto the driveway where the weeds were now knee-high. A convoy of black SUVs was pulling into the circular drive. They were sleek, dark, and menacing. Their windows were tinted so dark you could not see inside. There were 3 of them, moving in perfect formation, and behind them flashing blue lights cut through the morning haze. A sheriff cruiser. Spencer backed away from the window, his face draining of color. "Why are the police here?" he stammered. "Why did they bring the sheriff?" Vanessa dropped the screwdriver she had found. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. "Maybe it is standard procedure," she said, her voice rising in pitch. "Maybe they just do this for evictions." "Right, Dad?" Reginald did not answer. He was staring at the lead SUV. He watched as the driver door opened. A large man in a black suit stepped out. He wore an earpiece and dark sunglasses. He scanned the perimeter like Secret Service. "This is not an eviction," Reginald whispered. "This looks like a raid." Spencer started to hyperventilate. He grabbed Vanessa's arm. "She told them," he hissed. "Kenna told them. She found out about the signature. She found out about the loan. That is why the cops are here. They are coming to arrest me." Vanessa slapped his hand away. "Shut up, Spencer. Get a hold of yourself. If you act guilty, they will know you are guilty. Just keep your mouth shut." The sheriff stepped out of his cruiser. He adjusted his belt and walked toward the SUVs. He nodded at the security guards. They seemed to know each other. They seemed to be working together. Reginald felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had spent his whole life believing in authority. He was the principal. He was the law in his school. But now, looking at the armed men on his lawn, he felt like a criminal. "They are coming to the door," Spencer squeaked. "What do we do? Do we hide? Do we run out the back?" "We do nothing," Reginald barked, trying to summon the last shreds of his dignity. "We open the door. We are the owners of this house until 9 o'clock. We have rights." He marched to the front door. He smoothed his wrinkled shirt. He adjusted his collar. He waited. The doorbell did not ring. Instead, there was a sharp, authoritative knock. 3 raps. Hard. Reginald opened the door. The heat from outside rushed in, clashing with the stale air of the house. Standing on the porch was the security team. Behind them stood the sheriff. And in the middle of the group stood a woman holding a briefcase. She was sharp, professional, and completely indifferent. "Mr. Jenkins," the woman asked. Reginald nodded. "I am Reginald Jenkins. I am the legal representative for the Phoenix Group," the woman said. "It is 8:55. We are here for the final walkthrough and asset transfer." Reginald looked past her at the police car. "Why is the sheriff here?" he asked, his voice wavering. "Is that necessary?" The woman smiled. It was a smile that did not reach her eyes. Given the history of financial irregularities associated with this property and the hostile nature of the previous negotiations, our client requested law enforcement presence to ensure a peaceful transition. Spencer peeked out from behind Reginald's shoulder. "So you are not here to arrest anyone?" he asked, his voice cracking. The woman looked at Spencer. She looked at him like he was a bug on a windshield. "Not unless you refuse to vacate the premises by 9 o'clock, sir." Spencer let out a long, audible breath of relief. He slumped against the doorframe. Reginald bristled. "We are leaving. We are just finishing up." "Good," the woman said. "You have 5 minutes. At 9:01, my client will be arriving to inspect the property." "Your client?" Reginald asked. "The owner of the Phoenix Group." "Yes," the woman said. "The owner insists on seeing the property personally." Reginald straightened up. "Good. I want to meet him. I want to look him in the eye and tell him that he is taking advantage of a family in crisis. I want to tell him that karma is real." The woman checked her watch. "You will get your chance, Mr. Jenkins, but I would advise you to have your bags on the curb before you start giving lectures." She turned and walked back to the SUVs. The security guards remained standing like statues on the porch, blocking the exit but not entering. Reginald slammed the door shut. "You heard her," he shouted at Vanessa and Spencer. "Grab the boxes. Forget the chandelier. Just get the stuff out. I want to be standing in the driveway when this owner shows up. I want him to see me. I want him to know that he cannot break me." Vanessa scrambled to grab her suitcases. Spencer grabbed the box of electronics. They began dragging their lives out onto the front lawn, piling them up in a sad heap on the overgrown grass. Reginald grabbed his cane. He took one last look around the living room. He looked at the cracked paint. He looked at the spot where the chandelier used to hang. "This house is not good enough for me anyway," he muttered. He walked out onto the porch. He stood there waiting. He watched the driveway. At exactly 9 o'clock, a final car turned into the drive. It was not an SUV. It was a long, silver Rolls-Royce Phantom. The sunlight glinted off the Spirit of Ecstasy hood ornament. It glided silently over the gravel like a shark moving through water. Reginald's eyes widened. A Rolls-Royce. This Phoenix Group owner must be a billionaire. The car came to a stop right in front of the pile of boxes. The rear door opened. Reginald took a step forward, ready to give his speech, ready to demand respect. But when the foot stepped out of the car, it was not a man's dress shoe. It was a stiletto heel, a red-bottom Christian Louboutin heel. Reginald stopped breathing. "No," he whispered. "It cannot be." The woman stepped out of the car. She smoothed her skirt. She adjusted her sunglasses. She looked up at the house. Then she looked at the pile of boxes. Then she looked at the family standing in the dirt. She lowered her sunglasses. "Hello, Dad," she said. It was Kenna. The silver Rolls-Royce sat idling in the driveway like a sleeping beast. The engine hum was so quiet it was almost imperceptible, but the presence of the car screamed power. My family stood in the dirt, surrounded by the pathetic cardboard ruins of their lives, staring at the woman who had just stepped out of the back seat. I stood on the pavement, adjusting the cuffs of my cream-colored blazer. The heat of the Georgia morning was oppressive, but I did not feel it. I felt cool. I felt calm. I felt the kind of ice-cold clarity that only comes when you hold every single card in the deck. Reginald blinked his eyes, trying to process what he was seeing. He looked at the car, then at the driver who was holding the door, and then at me. His brain was misfiring. In his world, Kenna was the failure. Kenna was the one who drove a beat-up sedan. Kenna was the one who needed $500. This image of Kenna did not fit the narrative he had built for 30 years, and it was breaking him. Kenna, he whispered, his voice rough with confusion. What are you doing here? Before I could answer David, my lead attorney stepped forward. He was a tall man with silver hair wearing a suit that cost more than Spencer, former BMW. He held a leather portfolio in his hand. He walked past my family without making eye contact and stood next to me. He treated me with the deference one shows to a head of state. Mr. Jenkins. David said, his voice booming across the lawn. My name is David Sterling. I am the general counsel for the Phoenix Group. Reginald tore his eyes away from me and looked at the lawyer. Finally, he shouted, trying to regain his composure. The lawyer. Good. I want to speak to your boss. I want to speak to the owner of this company immediately. I am a retired principal and I demand to be treated with respect. This eviction is a sham. David opened his portfolio. He pulled out a document stamped with the official seal of the county. This is not a sham, Mr. Jenkins, David said calmly. This is a writ of possession. As of 9 o'clock this morning, the title of this property has been legally transferred. You are currently trespassing on private land. Reginald's face turned a dangerous shade of red. He stepped forward, shaking his cane in the air. I do not care about your papers, he yelled, spitting as he spoke. I want to see the person responsible for this. I want to look him in the eye. Where is he? Is he hiding in the car? Is he too of a coward to face me? Spencer stepped up beside him, trying to look tough. Yeah, bring him out. We know Kenna is here to beg for him too. Spencer looked at me and laughed. It was a nervous, shaky laugh, but it was filled with that familiar venom. Look at her, Dad, Spencer sneered, pointing at me. She probably heard the new owner was rich and came to see if she could get a job cleaning his toilets too. Or maybe she is here to ask us for money again since her little warehouse job is not paying the bills. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. Nice rental car, Kenna, Spencer mocked. Did you spend your last paycheck renting a Rolls-Royce just to impress us? You are pathetic. You are here to ask the new owner for a favor, aren't you? You want him to let us stay so you can move back in with us. I did not say a word. I just looked at Spencer. I looked at him with the same detached curiosity one might have when looking at a bug before stepping on it. David the lawyer cleared his throat. The sound was sharp and authoritative. It cut through Spencer's laughter like a knife. Mr. Brooks, David said, looking at Spencer with cold eyes. You are mistaken. Ms. Jenkins is not here to ask for a job, and she certainly did not rent this vehicle. Reginald looked back and forth between the lawyer and me. The pieces were starting to float in his mind, but he refused to let them connect. Then why is she here? Reginald demanded. Why is she standing with you? David turned to me. He gestured with his hand, a sweeping motion of introduction. Mr. Jenkins, it is my distinct honor to introduce you to the managing partner of the Phoenix Group. Reginald froze. The wind seemed to stop blowing. The birds stopped singing. David continued, his voice ringing with finality. You asked to meet the owner. You are looking at her. This is Ms. Kenna Jenkins. She is the founder and chief executive officer of K Logistics. She is the sole owner of the Phoenix Group Investment Fund, and as of 3 minutes ago, she is the sole legal owner of this property. The silence that followed was heavy. It was physical. It pressed down on the lawn like a lead blanket. Reginald dropped his cane. It hit the driveway with a hollow clatter, but he did not move to pick it up. He stared at me. His mouth hung open slightly. His eyes were wide, unblinking, terrified. Vanessa let out a small, strangled sound. She looked at the Rolls-Royce. She looked at my shoes. She looked at the security guards who were standing at attention, waiting for my command. She realized in a split second that the sister she had mocked for being poor was actually the one holding the keys to the kingdom. Spencer took a step back. He shook his head. No, he whispered. No, that is a lie. That is impossible. She sells clothes on the internet. She is a dropout. David pulled another document from his folder. It is a matter of public record, Mr. Brooks. K Logistics is a global supply chain firm valued at over $100 million. Ms. Jenkins built it from the ground up, starting in a warehouse apartment 10 years ago. The same apartment you mocked yesterday. Reginald looked at me. He looked at the daughter he had called worthless. He looked at the daughter he had called uneducated. He looked at the daughter he had just signed out of his life because he thought she had nothing. Kenna, he rasped. His voice was broken. Is this true? I took a step forward. My heels clicked on the pavement. I took off my sunglasses, slowly revealing my eyes. They were not the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of a CEO. It is true, Dad, I said. I looked at the house I had grown up in, the house where I was told I was never good enough. I own it all, I said softly. I own the mortgage you defaulted on. I own the debt Spencer tried to hide. I own the country club where you threw your party. And thanks to the waiver you signed yesterday, I own my entire future without any of you in it. Reginald's knees gave way. He stumbled back, catching himself on the hood of the Rolls-Royce. He looked at his hands, the hands that had signed the waiver, the hands that had thrown away a fortune because of his own arrogance. Vanessa started to cry. It was a sound of pure devastation. She realized she was not the golden child anymore. She was just a tenant being evicted by her landlord. Spencer looked like he was going to vomit. He looked at the sheriff standing nearby, and he realized that if I was the owner, then I was the one who could press charges for the fraud. I looked at them. I watched the realization sink in. I watched their world collapse in real time. You wanted to see the owner, I said, my voice hard as diamonds. You wanted to beg him for mercy. I paused, letting the moment hang in the air. Well, here I am. Beg. The silence on the driveway was shattered by a scream that sounded like a wounded animal. Vanessa dropped her suitcase in the dirt. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure, ugly denial. She stomped toward me, her heels sinking into the soft earth of the neglected lawn. Liar, she shrieked. You are a liar, Kenna. You are a fraud. There is no way you own a company worth millions. We would know. We would have seen it. She pointed a shaking finger at the Rolls-Royce behind me. You rented that car. You hired these actors to play lawyers and security guards. You are probably selling drugs. That is it, isn't it? You are running money for a cartel, and now you are trying to launder it through Dad's house. You are disgusting. Spencer jumped on the bandwagon, desperate to believe her. Yeah, that makes sense, he shouted, his voice cracking. Logistics, that is just code for smuggling, right? You are a criminal, Kenna. Wait until the police hear about this. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I just looked at David, my lawyer, and gave a small signal with my hand. David nodded to the security team. Two of the large men stepped forward, not to intimidate, but to clear a path. I walked past Vanessa. I walked past Spencer. I walked right up to the front door of the house where my father was still leaning against the Rolls-Royce, looking like he had been struck by lightning. Excuse me, Reginald, I said. I need to test the electronics in my new property. I walked into the house. The air inside was stifling hot, but I ignored it. I walked straight into the living room. My family followed me, stumbling over each other, drawn in by the gravitational pull of my confidence. Reginald limped into the room, his face pale. Vanessa and Spencer crowded in behind him, still shouting accusations. Get out of our house, Vanessa yelled. You are trespassing. I picked up the remote control for the massive 80-inch television mounted above the fireplace. It was the one luxury item they had refused to pack, hoping to sell it later. I am not trespassing, I said calmly. I am conducting an inspection. And part of that inspection involves reviewing the files my private investigators have compiled on the previous tenants. I pressed a button on my phone, casting the screen to the television. You want to know where my money comes from, Vanessa? I asked. It comes from being smarter than you. It comes from knowing everything about everyone I do business with. And when I decided to buy this debt, I made it my business to know exactly who created it. The screen flickered to life. The resolution was crisp. Video number 1, I announced. The video showed a dimly lit room. It was unmistakably the VIP lounge of the Whispering Winds Casino downtown. The timestamp in the corner was dated 2 years ago. Spencer gasped. "No," he whispered. "Turn it off." On the screen, Spencer was sitting at a blackjack table. He was holding a whiskey glass, and he looked sweaty and disheveled. Next to him sat a woman in a red dress, a stranger he was trying to impress. "You know, I am a big shot in real estate," Spencer on the screen slurred. "I just closed a massive deal today, 200 grand cash out refinance." The woman on screen looked bored. "Is that so, honey?" "Yeah," Spencer bragged. "My father-in-law is this old-school principal. Total square. He thinks he is signing permits for a deck renovation." The old fool did not even read the papers. I slid the loan documents right under his nose, and he signed on the dotted line. Reginald's eyes went wide. He took a step toward the TV. On the screen, Spencer laughed. "He trusts me, you know. He thinks I am the son he never had. I am going to take that 200 grand, flip it on this new crypto coin and turn it into 2 million. And the old dinosaur will never even know I used his house as collateral." The video ended. The screen went black. The silence in the living room was heavy enough to crush bones. Reginald slowly turned his head. His neck cracked with the tension. He looked at Spencer. "You called me a dinosaur," Reginald whispered. "You called me a fool." Spencer backed away, his hands raised in surrender. "Dad, that was deep fake. That was AI. You know how technology is these days. Kenna made that up. I never said that. I was drunk. I mean, I was not there. I did not let him finish. And now for the feature presentation," I said. "Video number 2. I swiped my phone screen. "No," Vanessa screamed, lunging for the remote. "Do not you dare." Marcus, my head of security, stepped in front of her, blocking her path without even touching her. She bounced off his chest like a rag doll. The second video played. This setting was brighter. It was a brunch patio. Mimosas were on the table. Vanessa was sitting with 3 of her friends' women I recognized from her Instagram. The timestamp was only 3 weeks ago. Vanessa was holding a glass of champagne, looking annoyed. "So how is your dad doing?" one of the friends asked. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "He is exhausting. He is broke and he refuses to admit it. He keeps talking about his legacy. I am like, Dad, nobody cares about your time as a principal. You are just a drain on my resources." The friend laughed. "Well, at least he has the house." Vanessa smirked. "Not for long. Spencer and I are working on a plan to get him to sell. We are going to put him in a home." "A home?" the friend asked. "Like a retirement community?" "No, like a state facility," Vanessa said, taking a sip of her drink. "There is this place called Shady Pines out by the highway. It is cheap. The smell is awful, but it is all he can afford. Once we sell the house and take our cut, we are dumping him there. I am not changing his diapers. Let him rot with the other old people. I want my inheritance now while I am young enough to enjoy it." The video froze on Vanessa's face, her lips curled in a cruel, selfish sneer. I turned off the TV. I placed the remote gently on the mantelpiece. Reginald stood in the center of the room. He was swaying. His hand came up to clutch his chest. His face had gone from red to a terrifying shade of gray. He looked at Vanessa. His golden child. The daughter he had praised at the party. The daughter he had chosen over me 1,000 times. "You were going to put me in a home," he wheezed. "Shady Pines. That place has been shut down for health code violations twice." Vanessa was shaking. Her face was streaked with tears and mascara. "Daddy, I was venting. You know how girls talk. We just say things. I did not mean it. I love you. I would never do that." Reginald looked at her, and for the first time in 30 years, the veil lifted. He saw her. He really saw her. He saw the greed. He saw the selfishness. He saw the monster he had created by giving her everything and asking for nothing. He turned to Spencer, the son he never had, the man he had defended against the bank. "And you," Reginald rasped, "a dinosaur, a fool." Spencer was crying now, sobbing like a child. "Dad, please." It was the alcohol. "I have a problem. I need help." Reginald let out a sound that was half sob, half roar. He grabbed the nearest object, which happened to be a vase wrapped in newspaper, and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, showering the room with glass. "Get out!" he screamed. He turned to Vanessa and Spencer. "Get out of my sight! You are rot! You are parasites! I gave you everything. I gave you my love. I gave you my money. I gave you my dignity. And you laughed at me. You stole from me." He clutched his chest tighter, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Dad Vanessa stepped forward, reaching for him. "Do not touch me!" Reginald shouted, backing away. "Do not you ever touch me again." He looked at me. He looked at the daughter standing calmly by the fireplace in the custom suit, the daughter who had exposed the truth. "Kenna," he whispered. I did not move to help him. I did not rush to his side. I stood my ground. "I told you, Dad," I said softly. "I told you I wasn't the one ruining this family. I was the only one holding it together, and you cut me off." Reginald looked at me with eyes full of agony. It wasn't physical pain. It was the pain of a man realizing he had thrown away a diamond to keep 2 handfuls of broken glass. He slumped onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "What have I done?" he moaned. "Oh my God, what have I done?" I looked at David. "The walkthrough is complete," I said. "The property is in acceptable condition, minus the broken vase." I walked toward the door. "You have 10 minutes to clear your things and get off my property," I told Vanessa and Spencer. "If you are not gone, I will have the sheriff arrest you for the fraud we just watched on television. The statute of limitations hasn't run out on that confession, Spencer." Spencer's face went white. He grabbed a box and ran for the door. Vanessa looked at her father one last time, but seeing no salvation there, she grabbed her purse and ran after her husband. I stood in the doorway watching them flee like rats from a sinking ship. My father sat alone on the couch in the empty living room, sobbing into the silence. The justice was brutal, but it was not finished. There was one last act to play. The sound of the sheriff's boots crunching on the broken glass of the vase was the only thing that broke the silence. Sheriff Miller did not look like a man who enjoyed drama, but he looked like a man who enjoyed justice. He walked straight past me and stood in front of Spencer. Spencer was trembling so hard his knees were knocking together. He looked at the sheriff, and then he looked at the open door as if calculating whether he could outrun a bullet. "Mr. Brooks," the sheriff said, his voice deep and gravelly. "Please place your hands behind your back." Spencer let out a high-pitched squeak. Wait a minute, Sheriff. This is a misunderstanding. That video was a joke. It was deep fake. My sister-in-law is a computer genius. She made it up to frame me." Sheriff Miller did not blink. He reached for his belt and pulled out a pair of steel handcuffs. The metal glinted in the sunlight streaming through the window. "We verified the IP address of the upload, Spencer. And we have the original file from the casino security server. We also have the affidavit from the notary public you bribed to witness Mr. Jenkins' forged signature. You are under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse." Elder abuse. The words hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Reginald flinched as if he had been slapped. He was the elder. He was the victim. The strong patriarch who had ruled his family with an iron fist was now just a victim on a police report. Spencer tried to back away, but Marcus, my head of security, was standing behind him like a stone wall. Spencer bumped into Marcus' chest and spun around. "No," Spencer screamed. "I am not going to jail. Vanessa, tell them. Tell them we did this together. Tell them it was your idea to sell the house." Vanessa's eyes went wide. She took a step back, putting distance between herself and her husband. "You liar!" she shrieked. "I had nothing to do with the loan. That was all you. Sheriff, he is lying. Take him away." Spencer's face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. He lunged at her, but the sheriff was faster. He grabbed Spencer's wrist and twisted it behind his back. There was a loud click as the first cuff locked into place. Then a second click. "Spencer Brooks, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "Because every word you say is just adding years to your sentence." Spencer looked at me with wild eyes as the sheriff began to drag him toward the door. "This is your fault, Kenna," he spit. "You ruined us. You are evil." I watched him go. I felt nothing. No joy. No sadness. Just the cold satisfaction of balancing a ledger. "Goodbye, Spencer," I said. "I will send a postcard to the penitentiary." The front door slammed shut behind them. Outside, I could hear the siren chirp as they shoved him into the back of the cruiser. Inside the living room, only 3 of us remained. Me, my father, and Vanessa. Vanessa stood in the center of the room, her chest heaving. She looked at the closed door, then she looked at me. The reality of her situation was crashing down on her. Her husband was gone. Her money was gone. Her house was gone. She turned to the only person who had ever saved her. "Daddy," she whimpered. Her voice broke into a sob. "Daddy, please. You have to help me. You cannot let them take Spencer, and you cannot let Kenna kick me out. Where am I going to go?" She rushed over to the sofa where Reginald was slumped over. She reached for his hand the way she used to when she wanted a new car or a vacation. "Daddy, look at me. It is Nessie. Your princess. I am scared. Fix this. Tell Kenna to stop." Reginald slowly lifted his head. His eyes were red-rimmed and bloodshot. He looked at his daughter, but there was no recognition in his gaze. The video of her mocking him at brunch was playing on a loop in his mind. "Let him rot with the other old people. I want my inheritance now." He pulled his hand away from her, as if her touch burned him. "I cannot fix this, Vanessa," he whispered, his voice raspy. "I have nothing to fix it with. I am broke. Remember, the dinosaur is extinct." Vanessa recoiled. "Daddy, I said I was sorry. I was drunk." Reginald stood up. It was a struggle, but he pushed himself to his feet. He looked old, frail, and utterly defeated, but he had enough pride left for one final act. "You wanted your inheritance," he said, staring at her. "You and your husband stole $200,000 of it. That is your inheritance, Vanessa. You spent it, you lost it, and now you have nothing left to take." He turned his back on her. He walked over to the window and stared out at the police car. Vanessa let out a scream of frustration. She spun around to face me. Her eyes were full of venom. "You happy now?" she hissed. "You destroyed this family. You tore us apart." "I destroyed nothing," I said, calmly checking my watch. "I just turned on the lights. The cockroaches scattered all by themselves." Vanessa scoffed. She grabbed her Louis Vuitton purse from the table. She grabbed her car keys. "Fine," she said, tossing her hair. "Keep the house. Keep the old man. I do not need you people. I am going to a hotel. I have friends. I have credit cards." She started to walk toward the door, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood. "Stop," I said. It was not a shout. It was a command. Vanessa froze. She turned around. "What?" "Drop the bag," I said. She clutched the purse tighter. "Excuse me. This is my purse." "No," I said. "It is not. That bag was purchased 6 months ago. I saw the charge on Spencer's credit card statement, the one I now own. It was paid for with funds from the fraudulent loan secured against this property." I took a step closer to her. "Technically, that bag is a proceed of crime. It belongs to the estate. It belongs to me." Vanessa's jaw dropped. "You cannot be serious. It is a purse." "Drop it," I repeated. "And the car keys, too." The BMW lease is in Spencer's name, but the payments were made from the joint account fueled by the stolen equity. The repo man is waiting at the end of the driveway. You are not driving anywhere. Vanessa looked at me with horror. She realized I was stripping her bare. I was taking the symbols of her status, the armor she used to pretend she was better than me. You are leaving here with the clothes on your back, I said. That is it. She looked at the bag. She looked at the keys. She looked at my face and saw that I would call the sheriff back in a heartbeat if she refused. With a scream of rage, she threw the bag at my feet. She threw the keys across the room. I hate you, she screamed. You are a monster. You think you are better than us because you have money now. But you will always be the lonely little girl who nobody wanted. You have no future, Kenna. You will die alone in this big house. I smiled. It was a genuine smile. It is funny you mention the future, Vanessa. Do you remember what you told me at the party? You said I had no future because I did not have a degree. I pointed to the door. Your husband is going to prison for 10 years, Vanessa. You have no job, you have no home, you have no money, and you have a record of being an accomplice to fraud. I leaned in close so she could hear the ice in my voice. I think your future is fully booked. Visiting hours at the state penitentiary are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Do not be late. Vanessa let out a choked sob. She looked around the room one last time, searching for a savior. But Spencer was in cuffs. Reginald was a statue by the window. And I was the executioner. She turned and ran. She ran out the front door, stumbling down the steps. She ran past the security guards who watched her go without a word. She ran down the long driveway in her expensive heels, tripping over the weeds, her golden hair coming loose in the wind. I walked to the door and watched her go. She reached the end of the driveway and stopped, looking left and right, realizing she had no car. She started walking down the hot asphalt road alone. I turned back into the room. The house was quiet now. The cancer had been cut out. All that was left was the patient. I looked at my father. He was still staring out the window, but he wasn't looking at Vanessa. He was looking at his reflection in the glass. A reflection of a man who had lost everything because he bet on the wrong child. It was time for the final conversation. The conversation where I dictated the terms of his surrender. Dad, I said. He flinched, but he turned around slowly. Sit down, I said, pointing to the leather chair. We have business to discuss. And looking at your financial situation, you cannot afford to ignore me anymore. He sat. He looked small. He looked ready to listen. The silence that descended on the house was heavy and absolute. It was the kind of silence that usually happens after a funeral when the guests have gone home and the reality of the loss finally settles into the furniture. But this was not a funeral. It was a cleansing. I stood in the center of the living room, listening to the fading sound of the police sirens carrying my brother-in-law away. The front door was still open, letting in the humid Georgia heat, but I felt cold. I walked over and pushed the heavy oak door shut. The latch clicked. It was a sound of finality. Now it was just the two of us. My father, Reginald, sat in his leather armchair, the same chair he had ruled from for 20 years. The same chair where he used to sit and critique my grades, my clothes, and my life. But he did not look like a king anymore. He looked like a man made of ash, holding himself together by habit alone. He stared at the blank television screen where moments ago his family secrets had been broadcast in high definition. He was breathing shallowly, his chest rising and falling in a jerky rhythm. I walked over to the sofa opposite him and sat down. I crossed my legs and smoothed the fabric of my suit. I did not speak. I waited. In business, the person who speaks first loses the leverage. Reginald slowly turned his head to look at me. His eyes were red-rimmed and watery. He looked at me with a strange expression. It was not anger. It was not hate. It was a desperate, calculating attempt at warmth. He forced a smile onto his face. It was a trembling, weak smile, but it was there. Kenna, he said softly. His voice cracked, and he cleared his throat to try again. Kenna, look at you. He gestured vaguely at my suit, at the expensive watch on my wrist, at the confidence radiating off me. You did it. You really did it. You beat them all. I just watched him, my face impassive. You know, he continued, leaning forward slightly, gaining a little strength. I always knew you had this in you. I knew you were special. That is why I was so hard on you. You understand that, right? He looked at me, expecting a nod, expecting validation. I pushed you, Kenna. I pushed you because I knew the world would be tough on a black woman with no degree. I had to be the villain so you could become the hero. I treated you like that to make you strong, to make you fight. And look, it worked. You built an empire because I gave you the fuel. He sat back, looking almost proud of his twisted logic. He was trying to rewrite history in real time. He was trying to turn 30 years of emotional abuse into a strategic parenting decision. So he said, spreading his hands, "Now that we have cleared the dead weight, now that Spencer and Vanessa are gone, it is just us, father and daughter. We can start over. I'm proud of you, Kenna, truly." He paused, waiting for me to melt, waiting for the little girl who craved his approval to run into his arms. I let the silence stretch for 10 seconds. Then I laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "You are rewriting history, Dad," I said, "and you are doing a terrible job of it." Reginald's smile faltered. "What do you mean? I am telling you the truth." "No," I said, leaning forward, my elbows on my knees. "You are telling me a lie that makes you feel better so you can sleep at night. You did not push me to make me strong. You pushed me because you hated that I was different. You hated that I didn't need your validation. You hated that I walked my own path. You called me worthless, not to motivate me, but because you truly believed it." Reginald looked down at his hands. "I made mistakes, Kenna. I admit that. But I am an old man. And I am your father. Blood is thicker than water." I shook my head. "We covered this, Dad. I bought the water. And I own the bloodline now, too." Reginald swallowed hard. "Okay. Okay, fine. You are angry. You have a right to be angry. But let us look at the practical side. You own the house now. It is a big house. Too big for one person. You are busy running a company. You need someone here to look after things, to keep an eye on the property." He looked around the room. "I can stay here," he said, his voice hopeful. "I can manage the estate for you. I will keep the pool clean. I will make sure the lawn is done. I will be the caretaker. I mean, this is my home, Kenna. Where else am I going to go?" I looked at him. I looked at the desperation in his eyes. He was terrified of the world outside that door. He was terrified of being poor. He wanted to stay in his castle, even if it meant being a servant in it. I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a single stapled document. "I anticipated this conversation," I said. Reginald's eyes lit up. He saw the paper and thought it was a peace treaty. "Is that an agreement?" he asked. "It is a lease," I said. I slid the paper across the coffee table toward him. Reginald picked it up. His hands were shaking. He squinted at the text. "A lease," he repeated, confused. "You want me to sign a lease to live in my own house?" "It is not your house," I corrected him gently but firmly. "It is my house. And this lease is not for the main house." He looked up, sharp fear entering his eyes. "What do you mean?" "The main house will be undergoing extensive renovations starting Monday," I said. "I am gutting it. I am removing every trace of the toxicity that lived here. I am turning it into a corporate retreat center for my executives." Reginald's jaw dropped. "You are gutting my home." "It is just a building, Dad. But to answer your question about where you will live, turn to page 2. He turned the page. "The guest house," he read aloud. "Yes," I said. "The small one-bedroom unit behind the garage. The one we used to store the lawnmower and the old Christmas decorations. I have had it cleaned out. It has a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a single bed. It is small, but it is functional." Reginald's face turned a deep shade of humiliated gray. You want me to live in the shed? He whispered. Like a dog. It is a fully permitted dwelling unit, I said. And it is better than a homeless shelter, which is your only other option right now. I pointed to the paragraph at the bottom of the page. And there is a cost. Reginald stared at me. Cost. Rent? I said. The market rate for a one-bedroom unit in this zip code is $1,500 a month. Since you are on a fixed income, I am offering you a discount. You will pay me $800 a month. Reginald threw the paper down. You are charging me rent, he shouted, his voice shaking with rage. I am your father. I raised you. And you want to charge me rent to live in a shack in the backyard of the house I bought. I stood up. I towered over him. You called me a freeloader, Dad. Remember, at the party, you told the whole world I was freeloading off the family. You said I was a drain on your resources. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard where the small guest house stood. I am just teaching you the value of money. Isn't that what you always wanted to teach me? Nothing in life is free, Reginald. You live on my property, you pay rent. If you are late by one day, you will be evicted. If you cause drama, you will be evicted. If you try to enter the main house without an invitation, you will be evicted. I turned back to him. This is not cruelty. This is business, and it is the last act of charity you will ever receive from me. Reginald looked at the lease. He looked at the door. He realized he had no car. He had no money. His golden child daughter had abandoned him. His son-in-law was in jail. He was completely and utterly alone. He realized that the power dynamic had not just shifted, it had inverted. He was now the dependent. He was the one who was worthless without the benevolence of the person he had despised. He picked up the pen. His hand trembled so violently he could barely hold it. $800, he whispered. That is half my pension. Then I suggest you budget carefully, I said, cold as ice. Maybe cut back on the country club memberships. He looked at me one last time. He searched my face for any sign of the daughter who used to bring him coffee and beg for a smile. She wasn't there. There was only the landlord. He pressed the pen to the paper. He signed his name. It was a small, shaky scrawl. Not the big, bold signature of the principal. The signature of a tenant. He dropped the pen. He slumped back in the chair, defeated. I picked up the lease. I checked the signature. Welcome home, Dad, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single silver key. I placed it on the table. Your things have already been moved to the guest house. You can go now. My contractors are arriving in 10 minutes to change the locks on the main doors. Reginald stood up. He grabbed his cane. He grabbed the key. He did not look at me. He walked toward the back door, the servant's entrance, the door he had made me use so many times. I watched him go. He walked slowly, shuffling his feet like an old man carrying the weight of the world. He opened the back door and stepped out into the heat, walking toward the small converted shed that was now his entire world. He was finally exactly where he deserved to be. And I was finally free. But the story wasn't quite over. Because as I walked out the front door to my Rolls-Royce, I realized that freedom wasn't just about leaving. It was about arriving. And I had finally arrived. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, and just like that, the chapter was closed. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the air. The humidity had broken, and a light rain had started to fall. It was not a storm. It was a gentle cleansing mist that cooled the heat of the day. For the first time in my life, the air around this house did not feel suffocating. It felt like oxygen. I walked down the brick steps. The sound of my heels on the pavement was different now. It was not the sound of a woman walking into battle. It was the sound of a woman walking toward peace. At the bottom of the driveway, the silver Rolls-Royce was waiting. But the driver was not the one standing by the open door. It was Julian. Julian was everything my family was not. He was kind. He was self-made. He was secure. He did not need to make me small to feel big. He stood there holding a large black umbrella, shielding me from the rain, before a single drop could touch my suit. He looked at my face, searching for signs of damage. He knew what this meeting had cost me. He knew the years of therapy, the nights of crying, the endless cycle of hope and disappointment that had led to this moment. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had built a life with me based on respect, not transaction. "I am better than okay," I said. "I am done." He nodded, understanding. He did not ask for details. He did not need to. He simply took my hand and squeezed it. It was a grounding touch, a reminder that I was not floating in the abyss. I had an anchor. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "Just 1 second." I turned around. I looked back at the house. For 30 years, that structure had been a monument to my inadequacy. Every brick held a memory of being told I was not enough. The window of my old bedroom, where I used to hide and read books about business while my sister practiced cheerleading. The kitchen where my mother would criticize my hair while praising Vanessa's smile. The living room where my father held court like a dictator. I used to look at this house and feel fear. I used to feel a desperate, clawing need to be invited inside. But as I looked at it now through the veil of soft rain, I saw something different. I did not see a home. I did not see a castle. I saw a depreciating asset with structural issues and a difficult tenant in the accessory dwelling unit. I saw square footage. I saw market value. I saw a tax write-off. The emotional cord that had tethered me to this place for 3 decades had snapped. It was not a violent break. It was just a release, like a boat finally slipping its knot and drifting out to the open sea. I saw a movement in the window of the guest house. The curtain twitched. I knew it was my father. He was watching. He was probably sitting on his narrow bed, realizing that the world had moved on without him. He was watching the daughter he threw away getting into a car he could never afford, driven by a man who treated her like a queen. I did not feel anger anymore. I did not feel the need to run back and explain myself. I did not feel the urge to save him. I felt indifference. And indifference is the true opposite of love. Julian placed a hand on the small of my back. "Ready?" he asked. I took a deep breath. The smell of the rain mixed with the leather of the car interior and the expensive cologne Julian wore. It smelled like the future. "Yes," I said. "I am ready." I slid into the back seat of the car. The door closed with a solid, heavy thud, sealing out the noise of the rain, sealing out the past. As the car began to move, gliding over the gravel driveway, I looked out the tinted window one last time. The house was shrinking in the distance. The imposing columns looked like toothpicks. The grand entrance looked like a dollhouse door. I thought about the old saying my grandmother used to quote. She used to say, "Blood is thicker than water." She used that phrase to guilt me into forgiving people who hurt me. She used it to bind me to toxicity. But as I watched the house disappear around the bend, I realized she was wrong. Or at least she had the wrong definition. They say blood is thicker than water, but water is what sustains life. Water cleanses, water flows. Blood can become infected. Blood can carry disease. And sometimes when the blood is toxic, you have to drain it to survive. I had spent my whole life trying to purify the blood of this family. I tried to filter it with money, with success, with obedience. But you cannot clean a poison that generates its own toxicity. So I chose the water. I chose the rain. I chose the flow of a life that moved forward, not backward. I leaned back against the headrest. Julian took my hand again. "Where to?" he asked. "Home," I said. And for the first time in my life I knew exactly where that was. It was not a building with columns and a pool. It was not a place where I had to beg for a seat at the table. Home was the feeling of safety. Home was the peace in my own mind. Home was knowing that I was enough not because of what I paid for, but because of who I was. The car accelerated, merging onto the highway, leaving the suburbs behind, speeding toward the city skyline that glittered in the distance. I closed my eyes. I was Kenna Jenkins. I was uneducated according to my father. I was worthless according to my sister. But according to the bank account and the man holding my hand and the peace in my heart, I was finally free. And that was the only title that mattered. This story illustrates a powerful truth. Biology is not destiny, and shared DNA is not a license for abuse. Kenna's journey teaches us that true worth is internal, not external. No matter how much you give to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, it will never be enough. The most courageous thing you can do is accept that you cannot save people who benefit from your subjugation. True family are the people who respect your boundaries and celebrate your growth, not the ones who only love you when you are useful to them. Walking away is not an act of weakness, it is an act of supreme self-preservation. If you have ever felt like you were drowning while trying to keep everyone else afloat, this is your sign to let go of the anchor. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut ties with a toxic family member to save your own peace? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If Kenna's victory resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that their value is not determined by how much they can endure, but by how brightly they can shine when they are finally free. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are the CEO of your own life. Do not let anyone else sit in the driver's seat.